Carol Ann would go down as the first chef to ever be eliminated from the show for a lack of effort during service that night, despite showing some promise during the signature dish, arguably having the best dish out of the bunch. However, safe to say, she would do just fine with her life after the show. After Hell's Kitchen, Carol Ann never returned to the kitchen, although she would use her kitchen experience she had and incorporate it into her acting career, as she would star in her own one-woman show called Burnt at the Stake, which depicted her time working at a steakhouse, and what eventually led to her to choose acting. This would earn critical acclaim. She would also appear in the film Casanova Was a Woman, where she would win an award for Best Supporting Actress at the Philadelphia Independent Film Awards. She also regularly performed as a stand-up comedian, and currently teaches gym classes in New York. Dewberry is arguably the worst chef from the season, and could even be considered as the first ever donkey due to his silly mistakes, but was without question a beloved chef this season despite his early exit. After Hell's Kitchen, he continued to pursue his culinary career, working as a chef at the Flying Biscuit Cafe in Atlanta, Georgia, and would eventually work his way up to the manager position. He would also post some of his cooking recipes on his own YouTube channel. Nowadays, he currently offers private cooking lessons and is a party planner. I can only imagine how much fun it must be to have Dewberry as a planner. Jeff would go down as the first ever chef to quit Hell's Kitchen in one of the show's first infamous moments, telling Ramsay off before his rage quit. His life since Hell's Kitchen hasn't been that noteworthy, as he unsurprisingly never returned to the kitchen, and worked as a used car salesman, and is currently an insurance agent. I think the most noteworthy thing about Jeff since Hell's Kitchen is that he would get into it with Ramsay once more in the parking lot after his walkout, with their confrontation leading him to sprain his ankle, which led to them paying Jeff $124,000 to keep this out of court. So yeah, he's a quitter and a pathetic chef, but I guess it was somewhat worth it in the end? Ah, Wendy Jo, who gave us the infamous "I thought cold water boiled faster than hot water" line, and the first ever Blue Team member to be eliminated. Really not much of note for Wendy, as she would return to her career in account managing, and is now happily married, so I'm sure she's living her best life. Mary Ellen is to most people the most forgettable chef from this premiere season, and honestly, her life outside the show hasn't been that noteworthy either, as she would return to her career in hospitality. She would also get married and now has 3 beautiful children, and honestly, that fact alone probably has made her life the most exciting out of every other chef this season. Chris was one of the few chefs with experience this season, which ended up being his downfall due to not living up to expectations. Well, that, and certain backstabbing gameplay from another contestant. After Hell's Kitchen, Chris would indeed return to the kitchen as the executive chef of Rowayton Seafood, where he would remain until he retired from the kitchen after over 30 years of work, and is now living in Maine as a furniture maker. Say what you will about Chris, but you have to admit that while the executive chef label never gave him much of a chance this season, you have to admire his dedication to the craft to do this profession as long as he did. Andrew was an interesting contestant this season, starting out as a clear villain before getting some sympathy, with his blunt elimination ultimately resulting in him being the final pre-Black Jacket boot. Andrew would go back to school to complete his master's degree at Cornell University, and while he would never return to the kitchen, he would become a manager and in general have various big roles at multiple restaurants throughout his life, and is currently the vice president of each restaurant partners located in Richmond, Virginia. Jimmy would sneak his way into the Black Jackets this season despite his subpar performance, but regardless, you have to respect his fight this season, as he did have some highlights, and would even be the first person to receive positive praise from Ramsay during his elimination. However, while he wouldn't return to the kitchen as a chef, he would mix his past experience with his experience on Hell's Kitchen, which seems to be a theme for many of these chefs, as he would return as an account executive, working at the chef's warehouse. The first true fan favorite in Hell's Kitchen history, Elsie's determination this season was a pleasure to watch, and that has followed her after the show as well, as she would indeed go on to complete culinary school, would appear on a number of cooking shows, and even published her own cookbook in 2007. She would also partner with Amusa Health, a company that shows a series of cooking demonstrations, and would also partner with Health First, a company that promotes healthier ways to make home-cooked classics. Seriously, this woman has 6 kids and still hasn't seemed to slow down one bit. Arguably the most hated chef this season, along with Jeff, Jessica still was one of the better chefs this season, which resulted in her 3rd place finish. She would use this deep run to officially go all in on her culinary career, as she would work her way up at her friend's restaurant in LA, before opening her own restaurant in Santa Monica, before getting it shut down in 2020, presumably due to COVID. She would also become a head chef at the Cam Cafe at the Cameron Art Museum, and now currently is the head chef at the Blockade Runner Resort at Wrightsville Beach. Despite not winning Hell's Kitchen, Ralph had quite the career and general success after the show, some of the most notorious success ever, as his status as a Hell's Kitchen runner-up made him a general celebrity chef within the cooking world, hosted many cable cooking shows. He would open many restaurants within the Miami, Florida area, with one of his employees in Royce also getting the chance on Hell's Kitchen. He would also have one more cooking reality competition, where he competed on Iron Chef America, where he would ultimately lose to the Iron Chef Bobby Flay. We end off on a bit of a sad note here, as despite winning Hell's Kitchen, Michael has one of the most notorious post-HK careers, and it's not for the best of reasons. As the case for many HK winners, he wouldn't end up taking the prize money in the end due to the strain it would put on his life. But much worse than that, Michael would suffer from major addiction problems, in large part due to losing his infant daughter, getting divorced, and would eventually become homeless. Luckily, the chef that changed the show forever would prove his perseverance, as he would remarry, is back to working as a chef on a sport fishing boat, and has the goal of owning his own food truck business one day. It truly is a reminder that these reality TV stars, especially the ones that do well, are still human after all. And despite everything great Michael did on the show, I think him overcoming his battles through life is truly his best achievement. The first boot of season 2 is still an iconic first boot to this day for her hilarious donkey behavior. Polly actually didn't let her bad performance in Hell's Kitchen stop her, and she returned to the catering business and now even owns her own catering company called Rollin' with the Food Snob, which is a fantastic name. She would appear in several magazines as well, and even has her own food blog. Despite this though, for her own sake, I hope she disabled the comments of that blog. The first chef to ever get medevac, despite not being a pro chef and the kitchen competition almost killing him, they would actually continue on with his cooking career, and would have some serious success for that matter. He would become an executive chef of an Italian restaurant called On Broadway in his hometown of Arlington, and he currently operates a food and catering truck. Outside of cooking though, he's also been busy, as he is working in the real estate business, and of all things, has a blue belt in Taekwondo. Despite being a forgettable chef, Gabe was another chef who didn't let a short run on Hell's Kitchen stop him, and he seemed to use Hell's Kitchen as a stepping stone to go for his dream, instead of going back to marketing, as he would stay in the kitchen game until opening his own barbecue restaurant in 2011 that would stay open for almost a decade before getting shut down in 2020 due to COVID. However, the barbecue sauce from his restaurant is still available for purchase throughout the US. After his restaurant shut down, he would become the director of food and beverage at the Flying Pickle. He is also another early boot season 2 contestant that would join the real estate world as well, as he is currently a Seattle-based agent. The youngest contestant in Hell's Kitchen history for nearly 20 years, Giacomo's age definitely showed as he made some foolish mistakes at times, thus resulting in being an early boot. However, after the show, he would become a head chef and property investor for his family's restaurant, Savino's. He would also get married in 2013 and has had a daughter, and is now living in Dallas, Texas. Tom was arguably the worst chef of season 2, as he took an absolute beating from Ramsay. And while it's not exactly known what Tom did for work after the show, he would actually make some public speaking appearances about his time on the show. Unfortunately, Tom would be one of 3 chefs from this season to have since passed away, unfortunately leaving us in 2023. Adored fan favorite from this season, Rachel unfortunately wouldn't have the chance to do anything outside the show, as she would sadly take her own life not even a year after the filming of season 2, thus making her the first ever contestant to pass away. Back on happy things now, at least for the time being, as despite being arguably the most forgettable contestant of season 2, Maribel has had quite the interesting career since Hell's Kitchen, as she would stay in the food industry, but as a cake decorator in Delaware. However, once it got shut down, she would start her own spice company called Wild Paw Spices, which has received critical acclaim. The prison chef now, Garrett of all people would actually have one of the more quieter post-Hell's Kitchen careers compared to a lot of other chefs this season, as he simply returned to cooking presumably as a line cook. However, on a more interesting note, he would get into acting, not only acting in a couple of short films, but producing 2 of his own as well. And yes, because I know some of you are curious, Garrett hasn't exactly been clean from the law, getting arrested 4 times since the show, with all of them being due to driving without a license. Sarah might have the most polarizing Hell's Kitchen career post-show, as she would actually become Justin Bieber's tour chef after the show, and no matter what you think about the Biebs, that is quite the gig I can imagine. However, she would throw that all away, as in 2013, she would get arrested for assaulting her boyfriend. Her life nowadays is pretty normal, as she currently tours restaurants for catering events across the US. Despite not making it to the finale, Keith was without question the second best chef of season 2, and due to this and his general friendship with Heather, he would actually work with her at the JLX restaurant. He would eventually go on to earn executive chef status at the Schmidt's Food Market. Unfortunately, Keith's life would end in the most terrifying of ways in August of 2012, as he would drown during a morning swim at his hometown beach, leaving behind his wife and daughter. No matter what you think about Virginia's time in Hell's Kitchen, you cannot deny her success outside the show. Some of the greatest success ever, as after continuing to work in the industry after the show, she would eventually open up her own restaurant called the Cork and Big Tavern, which would end up expanding to multiple locations across Texas. However, she would continue to grind, opening up another restaurant in Odessa, Texas, called the Red Oak Kitchen. She would of course come back to Hell's Kitchen as a member of the past runner-up brigade as well. One of Hell's Kitchen's most beloved winners ever, Heather's badassery was truly something to behold this season. And while she would leave her prized restaurant after a year, she would become a head chef at multiple other fine dining restaurants throughout her life. She would continue to also appear on cooking competition as well, and would of course come back in season 6 as the Red Team's sous chef. But probably even greater than all her success is that she would marry in 2014 and has since had 3 children. And man, dude, those kids have an absolute badass for a mom. One of the most notorious villain first boots in the show's history due to her treatment of Julia, Tiffany would return to her family's restaurant in Arizona and would sporadically make local television appearances for cooking demonstrations. She is also since married, and now is even more of a villain as she has 2 first names, now going by Tiffany Allison. Again, while Hell's Kitchen chefs were never the type to be truly famous outside the cooking world, millions of people were watching back in 2007. And a lot of them had likely never saw someone that looked like Eddie. And while Eddie has stayed in the cooking industry, he has mainly used his fame he got from the show to spread awareness for cystinosis disease. Maybe other than some winners, not many chefs in Hell's Kitchen history at the time became more of a celebrity chef than Aaron, as America's adored big, lovable Asian cowboy, and he would end up appearing on multiple television shows to give cooking demos. And Aaron would also support our veterans, as he would work for the Salvation Armory and teach them how to cook, and would eventually become a spokesperson for Henry's Farmers Market. And Aaron was able to do all this in a relatively short period of time, as he would unfortunately pass away less than 3 years after season 3, unfortunately due to heart problems. We have another early boot in Joanna from these early seasons that has done quite a lot for herself since the show. She used her time in Hell's Kitchen to build her own cooking business and give private culinary lessons, and she currently gives lessons to this day. And she also continues a trend of chefs in these early seasons who have gone on into the acting world. But probably what Joanna is most infamous for since the show is the tea she spilled about the mysterious 13th contestant JR, saying that they worked together before the show, and the reason why he was kicked out right away was due to spreading disinformation about her. She has since deleted this Facebook post and hasn't mentioned JR since, with the JR mystery in general seeming to simply be the last minute cut in the end. But still, quite the post-Hell's Kitchen experience for Joanna. Vinny is essentially unanimously considered the biggest villain of the season, and a pretty underrated all-time hated contestant due to snarky behavior. But despite his big talk, he really hasn't done much of anything significant since the show, returning to his job as a nightclub chef, and he does offer catering services. The first true downfall in Hell's Kitchen history comes at the hands of Melissa, as she went from a massive favorite early on to not even making it to the halfway mark. However, after starting as a Julia defender, she would become a doubter at the end, which makes what she's done since the show all the more ironic, as Melissa has gone on to be a culinary instructor in New York, as well as working in restaurants all across New York throughout her life. Brad was a solid chef this season despite not getting a black jacket, and despite his unfair elimination, he has gone on to do some good stuff since Hell's Kitchen. He would go on to become the executive chef of Ox and Son, and would make quite a bit of TV appearances as well, as he would appear on NBC's show The Food Fighters, and would appear as an expert of Season 9's Bar Rescue, and would even get his own TV show called Food Truck Nation. Josh, the infamous Black Jacket chef who would taint the prestige of the Black Jackets forever. However, he would actually prove himself worthy as a chef since his ejection, as he would become an executive chef at the Blue in Florida, and a sushi restaurant. He would also become a chef de cuisine at Filia by Michael Schwartz at SLS Brickell. He currently runs his own private chef and catering company, Waller and Sons Quality Foods. However, his best accomplishment had nothing to do with food, as he co-founded Born Foodie, a charity to help children in need that would unfortunately get shut down 4 months into 2016. Still though, as much as people love to make fun of the guy, a serious tip of the cap to Josh for all he's accomplished. Probably the most beloved chef of the old school era, Julia's underdog run as a Waffle House cook in the brutal environment of Hell's Kitchen enamored her to the Hell's Kitchen fan base. She actually would continue to work at the Waffle House for over a decade, but would also complete culinary school that Ramsay sent her to, and in the end would finally get a chance to run the kitchen at Ocean 66 in College Park. Jen had an overall damn good run in Hell's Kitchen, but again, she's a perfect example that these chefs are still people at the end of the day, as after appearance on the show, she became suicidal after all the extreme conditions she went through during the taping of the show. Again, guys, Hell's Kitchen and any reality TV show truly is no joke. Please be careful of the way you treat these guys. Thankfully, she would recover and she returned to her career as a pastry chef at the inn at the Turkey Hill in Pennsylvania. She has also since gotten married, has a daughter, and is currently running a cookie decorating business called Gentastic Sweets, named after a TV cooking show she hosted. The runner-up of season 3, Bonnie, would have one of the more interesting post-Hell's Kitchen careers, as after her appearance on the show, she would actually move to New Zealand, where she became a sous chef and eventually made her way to head chef. But she actually has since retired from the food industry, at least for now, and is using her old nanny skills to good use, as she became a school teacher at Patoka School in New Zealand. Unsurprisingly, Rock has had an insane career post-Hell's Kitchen, as not only has he come back to Hell's Kitchen numerous of times, I think the most out of any chef ever, but he has done so many other things in the cooking world as well, both on TV and as a professional. After leaving his prized restaurant after a year, he would eventually become an instructor at Stanford University and has been involved in many food businesses of some sort. Outside of his professional work, he has made an appearance on Gordon Ramsay's 24 Hours to Hell and Back, and he also wrote a cookbook titled 44 Things Parents Should Know About Healthy Cooking for Kids. One of the few stay-at-home dads to be on the show, while Dominic really shouldn't have been the first boot of season 4, he unfortunately was, but he didn't let that stop him from chasing his dreams, all while still being a great dad. Not only would he start his own culinary business, but he would actually become an executive chef for the Salem Ridge Racks, a minor league team for the Boston Red Sox. Sharon would go down as one of the least passionate chefs in the history of the show, caring more about her appearance than the food. But in her defense, she has stayed in the culinary industry in the near 20 years since season 4, still seemingly working as a Las Vegas chef. As you'd expect, Jason Underwood's life after Hell's Kitchen has been very interesting to say the least. After the show, he would return to the kitchen, but he would eventually hang up his chef clothes, likely not being able to take the fact that there are women around him, I'm assuming. But anyway, it's somewhat unknown what he's up to nowadays, as the only info we got about him is his Twitter account, where he often posts and retweets insane right-wing commentary. But even funnier is he apparently claims to be a political commentator himself, and of all things, a freaking pro wrestler. Seriously, is this man actually human? But I think probably the most shocking fact about all of this is that he has since gotten married and has 2 children. And yeah, I'm going to stop right there before I say something I shouldn't say. Craig has lived a somewhat normal life after Hell's Kitchen, as after the show, he returned to his previous job in Long Island to work as a sous chef, but has since moved on to being a manager of the food business, working many manager jobs at bars, and is currently a manager of an airport. Vanessa would be another chef that would step away from the culinary world, but it would be pretty cool, as she would actually get involved in law enforcement, and she would become a detention sergeant and is currently a coroner for the coroner's office. I guess it is only fitting that the first ever chef to be taken out by injury would show just how much of a badass she truly is in real life. Shayna has also had a pretty interesting post-Hell's Kitchen career despite being very forgettable, as she would actually go on to open her own restaurant literally while Hell's Kitchen season 4 was airing, likely trying to take advantage of her fame from the show, but it would unfortunately close in June 2010. She's also another contestant that's gotten into acting, although in her case it's mostly theater, as she has been in several big plays in the New York area in the past decade. We got one of the more pathetic post-Hell's Kitchen lives now in Ben, as not only would he indeed give up on cooking and go back to engineering, which, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but far and away the worst thing about this douchebag is that he'll get arrested in 2019 for assault. Probably a top 5 worst human being to ever be on the show. Ironically, really not much to say about the loudmouth Roseanne, as she would also immediately hang up her chef clothes despite making a decent run in season 4. As she works as a receptionist, seemingly to this day. We go from super boring post-Hell's Kitchen careers to super interesting now, as Lou Ross is the definition of hard work and determination paying off. After Hell's Kitchen, he would work in multiple restaurants around the West Coast before finally having the ability to open his first restaurant in 2024, called Staff Meeting. He's also a dance coach, and his work outside the kitchen is definitely showing as well, as the dude is absolutely jacked. Probably the most iconic contestant from this season is Matt. And shocker, I know, he's lived quite an interesting life since season 4. He would become an executive chef in New Jersey and has his own YouTube channel where he gives cooking demonstrations. He would also actually get offered to come back for Rookies vs. Veterans, but turned it down due to his wife being pregnant at the time. I've personally done a whole interview with Matt as well, so be sure to give that a check as well to see what all he's up to these days. Despite Bobby somewhat pissing off Ramsay by calling himself the Black Gordon Ramsay to begin the season, he would make enough of a good impression on Ramsay that he would be one of the first ever non-winners to be hired by Ramsay, as he would work for Gordon in Manchester at multiple restaurants. He also launched a program shortly after the show called F Bites that's still running over 15 years later, which is specifically designed to give youth basic culinary skills. Aside from Sarah, Jen might have the most bipolar post-Hell's Kitchen life there could possibly be. First off, to the surprise of nobody, she'll be fired from her head chef position in Chicago after, you guessed it, get into a fight with the owner. And of course, Jen would come back almost a decade later for Rookies vs. Veterans, where she would do the same thing to Ramsay. And not only would she embarrass herself, but her leaving her food truck business behind to film this season would cost her a ton of money in the end. However, she currently is a chef for a celebrity catering company and has cooked for multiple celebrities including Paul McCartney, Lady Gaga, and One Direction. Seriously, how can someone who gets so butthurt over criticism get opportunities like this? Life is truly bizarre, man. While Corey has stayed in the culinary business since Hell's Kitchen, it's definitely been more of an interesting route for her, as she would work as a food stylist, which I guess isn't that surprising given her appearance. But she would also start her own business, of all things a soup business that has seemed to work out pretty well, and has also gotten married, has 2 daughters, and now is known as Corey Bell. We got a horrible update now with Petroza, as after the man returned to the kitchen working as an executive chef for multiple successful restaurants, he would unfortunately pass away in 2019 after battling lung cancer, one of the first ever Hell's Kitchen contestants to pass away. On to the winner of the season now, where of course everyone wants to know what happened to them. Christina would work 10 months at London West Hollywood, which isn't that bad compared to other winners. She would also become a manager, managing Caldwell Vineyard, and would of course return to Hell's Kitchen multiple times. One of them being as a past winner in season 11, where she would get hit on by Dave Levy, so that must have been quite an ego boost for her. Sarah would have a pretty good career despite being the first boot of season 5, as she became a sous chef at Redstone American Grill, and would later become the kitchen manager at Yard House. But obviously the biggest change is that yes, she is now a female, beginning her transition in 2020, and officially becoming known as Sarah K. Phoenix in 2022. Which I gotta say is quite a badass name, I'll tell you what. One of the biggest what ifs in history is G, and how her life could have changed had she not gotten injured, as she definitely showed winner potential. However, safe to say, she's done very well for herself since season 5, as she would get into the management side of things in the kitchen, start her own business, and has done cooking demonstrations for some major food brands. Charlie was a little prep chef in season 5, so it was going to be interesting if he would continue on into his culinary career, or realize this industry wasn't for him. Well, not only would he continue to advance in his cooking career, but he would excel, eventually making his way into the executive chef position in restaurants around Florida. Unfortunately, Charlie would pass away in a sudden motorcycle accident in March of 2024. One of the most recent chefs to pass as of writing. Probably the most shocking post-Hell's Kitchen career comes from Seth, as one of the most notorious donkeys in Hell's Kitchen history would indeed damn near follow in Ramsay's footsteps, opening up many fine dining restaurants since season 5, and I'm sure he's well worth into the millions. Hey, maybe when Ramsay retires, Seth can take over Hell's Kitchen. Who knows at this point? What a shocking turnaround. Coy was the youngest chef in season 5, and has had quite the career since. She became an executive chef at Mediterranean Chef, and opened her own business called Leela T's Catering Company. And she also designed her own clothing line of chef garbs for women. Despite going out of Hell's Kitchen with a complete whimper, Jay has actually done quite a lot for himself since Hell's Kitchen. He's held multiple high-level positions at restaurants, including executive chef, manager, and consultant. However, one of the coolest things any chef has done is Jay opening up Hope for Hire charity, which helps people with autism gain employment. After her brutal time on the show, unsurprisingly, Lacey wouldn't do that much cooking-wise afterwards, with the only real thing she did was design special cakes for bakeries. Her new career, though, has been as a nails rep and ambassador for Jamberry Nails, which, to be fair, I believe she's been able to make a pretty good career out of. LA was also super young in season 5, and is the third young chef this season to go on to have great success, as she's worked as an executive chef in multiple restaurants throughout her life, and is currently working at the world-famous Rosie's Den. Despite starting her cooking career very late and having a very rocky run in season 5 despite a decent run, Carol has gone on to do some great things in the culinary industry, as she would work her way up to executive chef, and even started her own business offering cooking services. And she would eventually open up a restaurant in 2017, even though it closed down in 2020, likely due to COVID. Giovanni has had a relatively quiet life since Hell's Kitchen, but then again, I guess given that he already had great success before season 5, there really hasn't been much room for him to progress, at least cooking wise, throughout his life since then. Obviously, the biggest thing for Giovanni, though, since season 5, would be him coming back for All Stars. A very unexpected pick, but a good one at that, as it was really cool to see him come back. Robert would, of course, come back in season 6, and despite a less than stellar run, he's had an amazing time off Hell's Kitchen. He's worked as a head chef at multiple restaurants, and would even open up his own food truck, and would be back on TV again, competing on Beat Bobby Flay. However, the best thing Robert's done since Hell's Kitchen is he's gotten into amazing shape, losing well over 200, if not 300 pounds. Despite the absolute beating Ben took from Ramsay this season, he immediately used his fame from the show to his advantage, actually becoming a host of a TV show called Big Ten Cookout. And funny enough, he and Paula would eventually open up their own restaurant called 1500 Degrees, where he would work as a sous chef. He's also come back to Hell's Kitchen a couple of times, first as one of the returning chefs for season 9 Black Jackets, and of course for All Stars, where he would be the first boot after simply not being in good enough health to compete with the others. After her deep run in season 5, Andrea would continue to work as a sous chef before eventually becoming an executive chef in 2012. She is now currently a private chef in New York. As mentioned, Paula would open up a restaurant with Ben, but has also done plenty of other great things, with fellow Hell's Kitchen alumni at that. She would actually be Latasha's boss before she came onto the show, and of course won season 13, and would open up another restaurant, and is currently the executive chef at Burlock Coast Seafair and Spirits. Danny would have one of the more lackluster post-Hell's Kitchen careers for a winner, as not only would he be a sous chef instead of head chef at the Borgata, but he would literally only work there for a couple months. He would also get arrested for drunk driving in 2012. But it's not all been bad, as he would start his own catering company, and now currently is the executive chef at a restaurant in Florida. Speaking of donkeys, Colleen wouldn't be quite as successful as fellow donkey Seth, or even do that great in general, to be fair. In her defense, despite everything, she would go back to her cooking class, and would even appear on local television cooking stations. However, not only would she eventually close her cooking school, but she hasn't updated her cooking website in years, so I really don't know what she's up to these days. Louis infamously bragged about his diner, where he only charged his signature dish that Ramsay spit out $4.75, with coffee of course. And after he didn't even make it past the first service, he returned to his diner, where he presumably continues to work to this day, to actually pretty positive reviews, which hey, I honestly kind of respect in a way. Melinda would also be an iconic boot in the iconic season 6 premiere with her pasta meltdown, but would have a relatively good life after Hell's Kitchen, a la Louis, despite her awful showing. She returned as a private chef, which she presumably still does to this day as well, and has actually become a professional yoga instructor. I'm sure you all want to know how Joseph did after his infamous altercation with Ramsay. And while this may surprise a lot of you, the hothead actually did pretty well for himself despite embarrassing himself in front of millions. He would become an executive chef at multiple restaurants, and even dated Mia Tyler, daughter of Aerosmith's Steven Tyler, for 3 years before breaking up in 2023. Gee, I can only imagine why that relationship didn't work out. I'm sure Mia felt that Joseph was too much of a nice guy for her. One of the most shocking post-Hell's Kitchen career stories is Tony. He would open his own restaurant with his childhood friend called Big and Littles, which has received critical acclaim. Now, yes, a lot of chefs went on to open their own restaurants, but what makes Tony so inspiring was that he had no culinary school experience, and he simply taught himself, and didn't exactly have a great showing in season 6 either. So the fact that he went on to have this much success is truly inspiring. And his restaurant would even be featured on Food Network's Mystery Diners and Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives. Despite Lovely Donna having a lovely experience on the show, she has had quite the resume after the show, becoming a bit of a celebrity chef in a way, as she would compete on other shows like Food Network's Star and Food Fighters. She would also host a cooking show on Discovery Plus called Lovely Bites. And in her own life, all she's done is open her own restaurant where she works as an executive chef, and the restaurant is called, you guessed it, Lovely Eats. Hey, considering she was only cast likely due to her name, it's cool that she's embraced it now and making the most of her life. Tech came into season 6 having no job, and despite her not exactly doing great that season, she proved herself enough to where she likely now will never have to worry about working again in her life if she chooses to. She would work as an executive chef in many restaurants throughout the years, and is currently the executive chef at Golden Years in Brooklyn. She also was the runner-up in a Chopped episode, and of all things appeared on Vice's Dark Side of Reality TV when covering Hell's Kitchen. I didn't mention this for Tech, but I'll say it for Jim, as the two plan to open a restaurant together, but it's unclear if that ever went through, and if it did, it obviously didn't last long. But that's not a bad thing, as we already saw Tech's success, and Jim himself would actually work as a chef de cuisine for Jay Santos. And he has an online presence to this day as well, as he's a Twitch streamer under the name of Jimmy Mac. Amanda was a nice little presence on season 6, but she's no longer cooking these days. She worked as a sous chef up until 2016, but has since become a real estate agent, and moved to Miami to pursue a career. Andy would also have one of the most notorious post-Hell's Kitchen careers, as his success actually mostly came from cookbooks, releasing a number of them throughout the years. He would also continue to be on TV, also appearing on Chopped. And there's another Jay Santos cameo here, as the two of them, along with other celebrity chefs, would raise over $100K to stop childhood hunger. And in his personal life, he is the owner of The Smoke Shop, a barbecue restaurant in Boston, which has won Best Barbecue Restaurant in 2018, 2019, and 2021. There's finally not much to say about one of these season 6 chefs, as Sabrina simply returned to her previous job at the DC Ranch Village Club before eventually becoming a restaurant manager at J. Alexander's, which I believe keeps her occupied these days. As you would expect, Van hasn't exactly sat on his hands to season 6, as not only would he of course come back for All Stars, but he's been executive chef for multiple restaurants, which I know I've said about a lot of contestants so far, but seriously, the resume for Van is endless. And he would appear on Vice's Dark Side series twice, one for Hell's Kitchen, and one for wrestling. As for those of you that don't know, Van is actually the son of former wrestling star Luna Vachon. Suzanne, while you may think also went on a crazy trajectory, she's actually remained relatively quiet, as after continuing to be a sous chef after season 6, she is currently a culinary team support leader at the Milwaukee Art Museum, which I will say is a pretty interesting occupation for sure. Tennille has also remained relatively low-key despite her iconic showing, as they launched their own catering company and is currently a manager at Great American Restaurants. And as you can tell, they now go by they instead of she. Ariel was already on a great path before coming back in season 18, as she would become an executive chef and worked for a company that specialized in airport dining. However, after of course coming back for Rookies vs. Veterans and winning, that would change her life forever, as even though she turned down the prize restaurant, she became the vice president of culinary at Del Frisco's Double Eagle, and has published her own book called Freckle Face Foodie, which covers her life as a chef. I mean, Kevin admitted himself when he came back for season 18. He wasn't as hungry as he was in season 6 due to all the success he had after barely losing that season. He would actually work alongside Van for a while before becoming an executive chef at a resort. And after season 18, he would take up a position as an executive chef at American Cruise Lines. Quite the gig, to say the least. Despite arguably being Hell's Kitchen's most iconic winner, Dave's life has been pretty chill since, which to be fair, fits in line perfectly with his personality. But yeah, he would work at the Arashi restaurant for a year, but left after the Winter Olympics ended, and would actually become a baker for a cafe before closing in 2022, and now currently works at Embark Smokes Meats. Stacy is arguably one of the most forgettable contestants in Hell's Kitchen history, and her life outside the show hasn't been that exciting, as she's still a personal chef and offers cooking classes on the side as well. After literally walking out of Hell's Kitchen, Andrew returned to his career as a farmer, where he probably gets off on butchering animals to this day. It's also been rumored he wanted to open his own restaurant, but is yet to do so at the time of writing. Man, could you imagine the amount of deer head that would be around that restaurant? My god. Mikey would have an interesting post-Hell's Kitchen life, as he would work at the Four Seasons Resort in a variety of places, such as Hawaii, Wyoming, and then Disney World. Talk about diversity and working around the world, my god. Now though, he is currently a senior sous chef at another resort, this one a beach resort. I guess Mikey does give me that vibe that he would work around resorts full-time. Jamie is another all-time forgettable contestant, and a pretty dull one as well. And her life has been pretty dull as you'd expect, as she returned as an executive chef, and is now a restaurant consultant for North Shore Restaurants. After a less than stellar run in season 7, Maria would nonetheless progress in her culinary career, becoming a sous chef at the Hilton Hotel. But she would leave the culinary world and is currently in the healthcare insurance world now. As Scott made very, very clear in season 7, he already had a very good resume prior to Hell's Kitchen. So how would he do after his time on the show? Well, credit where credit is due, as he would continue to work in fine dining restaurants, and would even open his own restaurant in 2017, which is still open to this day. We got yet another Jay Santos cameo here, this time coming from a fellow Season 7 contestant in Salvatore. As after the two developed a friendship, Salvatore would work at one of Jay's restaurants called Blue Ink up until it closed in 2014. However, he's gone on to even bigger things, as he is the co-owner of a pizzeria in New Jersey, which he's still doing to this day. Siobhan has one of the more complicated post-Hell's Kitchen stories, as after actually having a decent amount of success in the kitchen, she would switch careers and join the fashion industry, which I think most people could absolutely see her doing. Unfortunately, things wouldn't work out, and she would lose everything she had, and would even become homeless for a bit. Luckily, she would be able to turn things around, and now works as a freelance model. But everything, and I mean everything about her life nowadays is a mystery. So hopefully everything is okay. Fran was quite the fighter in Season 7, and despite being over 60 now at the time of writing, she's still busting out there, as she runs her own catering company called Catering Creation, which I could see her doing until she dies. Despite her horrible ending, Ramsay's words of encouragement truly seemed to spark Noka, as she would become an executive chef in New York before also starting her own catering company called Chefing Up Catering, which, similar to Fran, I could see her doing until she literally can't move. Ed has had an interesting post-Hell's Kitchen life, as you would think he would want to get out of teaching high school students and move on up into the culinary world, which he would end up doing. However, it appears that teaching kids is his true calling, as he would leave his executive chef position and go back to teaching high school kids, which he still does to this day, which I really respect. I didn't know this and Jason never mentioned it, but apparently Jason wasn't just a personal chef for a bunch of randos, he was a personal celebrity chef, and would continue to do that after Season 7, cooking for NFL players, and is a personal chef to the William Tennis sisters. He also owns two businesses, one catering company and one food truck, with the latter dedicated to being a barbecue food truck. Autumn made her love for food obvious in Season 7, despite Ramsay busting her balls about it, but she appears to still be cooking as a personal chef to this day. However, she is also a real estate agent and developer at Kelly Property Management in Alabama, which it wouldn't surprise me if that's her true full-time thing nowadays. Despite arguably being one of Hell's Kitchen's greatest contestants due to 2 deep runs, Benjamin hasn't gone all in on the restaurant industry like you might expect, as he would literally retire from the culinary industry shortly after All Stars aired, and he would work as a BME, and now currently works as a sales consultant for a Lincoln dealership. Maybe other than Christina Wilson, no other Hell's Kitchen contestant has benefited from being on the show like Jay has. I already mentioned all the restaurants he has that many other HK alumni would work for, but he would also teach culinary classes, and has appeared on numerous TV shows, and of course would be the Blue Team sous chef from seasons 19 and 22, leading some of the most talented Blue Teams ever, might I add. Holly has one of the most notorious post-HK careers ever, as she wouldn't even be given her a prize restaurant due to visa issues, making this the first public knowledge to the fan base that winning Hell's Kitchen really doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things. Due to this, she would leave the culinary world in 2017, and would work as a design manager for years before becoming a president of Intelligent Lighting Systems, where she would also meet her husband, and now is known as Holly Love. We start off Season 8 on a pretty sour note, as Antonia would quit cooking altogether and instead got into the sales industry. Unfortunately, in 2024, she would be on the verge of going homeless, and started a GoFundMe, which has done well, but there's no update on just how much better she's doing now. So again, absolutely all the best to her. On a much lighter note, Lisa has lived a quiet life, as you would expect after the show, returned to the corporate world as a food and beverage director. I always felt bad for Curtis after his heartbreak elimination, but thankfully, he has done a lot in the culinary world since, as not only would he launch his own catering company called Chef Lewis and Rob Catering, but he is currently an executive chef at Harding University. You might not believe this, but I'll be damned, Raj has lived a pretty under-the-radar life post-Hell's Kitchen, and for that matter, a pretty successful life as well. Not only would he return to being a personal chef, but he's also a catering chef. And even cooler news now, the dude is low-key jacked. Who would have thunk it? Brace yourselves for this next chef, but he's probably the biggest piece of shit to ever be on the show. It's crazy too, given Louis is so forgettable, but the man would be arrested in December 2024 for possessing inappropriate images of minors. Keep in mind, this is the same guy who worked as a camp cook. Good God, I'm gonna be sick. Let's just move on. On to much happier news now. Emily, while not great, was a very jovial chef, and has done pretty well for herself, as she would become a catering director, and is also a food blogger for Battery Babe, which I could totally see her being a contributor for a site with that name. Despite arguably being one of the worst chefs in Hell's Kitchen history, Melissa hasn't done bad for herself at all, as after returning to the kitchen and then becoming a culinary instructor, she would eventually work her way up to executive chef for Brown's Brewing Company, which, to be fair, does have average reviews, but still. I do have to wonder, though, if one of the bad reviews came after someone had to wait for their food due to Melissa butchering all the food during service. I don't know. Boris had a ton of fight in him in Season 8, despite not being the best chef in the world, and this fight is shown in the best of ways in the real world, as after becoming a sous chef in New York City, he would then become an executive chef at the Loft Steakhouse in Brooklyn, which has insanely good reviews. Bless Rob's heart, but he probably has the funniest and most fitting post-Hell's Kitchen life, as he would open his own gastropub, with it being called The Fat Monk. I'm not kidding. And as a cherry on top, pun intended, he has his own ice cream company called Granny's Ice Cream. I mean, again, man, credit where credit is due to these chefs for taking what Ramsay said about them and running with it. It's obviously worked. Speaking of credit where credit is due, that's the case for Vinny, as he talks the talk, and while he didn't necessarily back it up in Season 8, he has done so in real life, opening his own restaurant in 2018, and is currently the executive chef at Tam O'Shanter Country Club. He also appeared on CNBC's Restaurant Startup along with Trev to pitch a steakhouse, which won the episode, even though the restaurant obviously hasn't gone anywhere since. Despite showing a ton of potential after a great underdog run in Season 8, Sabrina would eventually quit cooking, in large part due to the death of her father, but wouldn't exactly leave the food world per se, as she's a content creator, which apparently earns her enough to make a living, I believe, as she has a dedicated YouTube channel focused on healthy eating. And fun fact, she was asked to come back for All Stars, but turned it down, as I think that's around the time where she was getting burnt out on cooking. But man, could you imagine Sabrina being on that season as well? Holy moly. We got another chef now who quit cooking, as while Gail would be a chef de cuisine for a while after Season 8, as of now, she's a flight attendant. Trev, as expected, has lived a polarizing life outside of both of his seasons. As mentioned, he would appear on CNBC with Vinny, and actually worked for CNBC as a TV consultant. In the culinary world, not only would he of course come back for Season 18, but he would work as an ambassador and chef for multiple catering companies. However, he would be yet another black jacket chef from this season to retire from cooking, and is now currently a mailman. Of course, a big reason why so many people wanted Jillian to win Season 8 was not only due to her being the best chef on the red team and being a fan favorite, but she needed them most given she was living with her boyfriend and had an infant at the time of filming. And while she hasn't done anything necessarily spectacular since, she would work at multiple restaurants, although unfortunately didn't seem to have a good experience at a couple of them. And while I don't think is necessarily out of the culinary world, she currently works as a dietary and environment services manager for a medical center. As much as I hate Russell, credit to him, he has had a ton of success post-Hell's Kitchen, as he has opened many successful restaurants and is currently an executive chef at Gibson Steakhouse to great reviews. He would also appear on other TV cooking shows, such as The Iron Chef. Hey, nobody ever doubted his cooking ability. It was his attitude holding him back, which he has gone on to admit that the way he acted on the show was uncalled for, which again, respect to him for admitting that, and hopefully he is just now an overall better person. Despite being a bit of an underrated donkey of a first boot, Steven has done very well for himself, as he opened his own restaurant called Talk at Trails and in New York, which is still open to this day, and he also has a food truck, which also holds excellent reviews. After lying to Ramsay's face, one of the worst moments from a contestant ever, Brendan unsurprisingly left the culinary world soon after, instead opting to go down the business route, which, to be fair, he would get his MBA in business administration in 2016. Again though, man, the stereotypes are hilarious on some of these post-careers. The liar Brendan is a full-on businessman now, like, why am I not surprised? Despite being one of the more forgettable contestants ever, Amanda would be one of the select few chefs to appear on Chopped, almost a decade after Season 9 aired, might I add. As for her own career, she would return to being a personal chef, and would then become a chef consultant. She has also since gotten married, and is now known as Amanda Palmer. An underrated bad chef and overall douchebag in the grand scheme of things, Chino has lived a relatively quiet life since Season 9, as he would work as an executive chef for a couple restaurants, and is now currently director of culinary for JLU Hospitality. Gina would also live a pretty quiet life after the show, as she went back to work as a consultant. She's also since gotten married, and is now known as Gina Haggerty. Monoy would have a bit more going for him comparably after season 9, as he would become a head chef at the Brick Restaurant, a popular location in Miami. Nowadays, he's a private chef and owner of Keys to Catering. It seems like it's working out well enough for him, as he's got to be doing something right to continue to be a good dad to his 6 kids. Krupa would return to her life as a private chef after season 9, but would expand her career a bit, becoming the owner of Chef Crew Catering, was an executive chef up until 2022, and is currently a culinary director at Oath 84. Jonathan would go back to his low-key southern lifestyle after the show, as he would become a culinary consultant, and looked to be living his best life. Unfortunately, he would suddenly pass away in 2022 of a heart attack at the super young age of 45. No matter what you think of the man, oh my god, that is so brutal and scary. Jamie showed a ton of promise and potential at her young age of 24 in season 9, which is why her elimination was such BS. But she figured she was in for a great career, and she has done quite a lot for herself, to say the least. After returning to her consultant job after the show, she would go on to later work at the IMG Academy, making it up to executive chef. But she hasn't just excelled in the kitchen. No, she would become a territory manager for US Foods, is a CrossFit coach, and is the culinary manager of Lactulus American Group. I do think, unfortunately, Carrie is a prime example of being on Hell's Kitchen, and specifically, being target numero uno for Elise, making her lose her passion for cooking, which is obviously understandable. She is now a Pilates instructor, and she seems to be living well, all things considered. Similar to Jamie, Natalie was also a young chef who had so much potential, and she has done a lot as well in her own life, and in other TV cooking shows. On the TV side of things, she would compete in Supermarket Steakhouse, where she finished as the winner, and competed on Beat Bobby Flay, and made it all the way to the final round. On the personal side of things, she became a head chef, and is currently an executive chef, and still just in her late 30s, so she can do so much more in her life in the culinary world. Elizabeth would be another ace-case chef who would go on to do some acting work, as she might just have the best resume of the bunch, as she has appeared in series such as Law & Order, Sex and the City, and The Sopranos, and she would regularly appear to give cooking demonstrations on Good Morning New York. She is currently a culinary specialist at Tapoos Inc. Jennifer would have great success before and after coming back for All Stars, as she would work no lesser than an executive chef for multiple restaurants around the East Coast. And she would also be another chef to compete on Chopped in 2021, with the prize of this one being $50,000, but unfortunately, she would finish as the runner-up. Ramsay said it to Tommy himself, he had a great career ahead of him and he belonged in the kitchen. And that has indeed been the case. Not only would he go on to own and be an executive chef of his own restaurant, but he also appeared on Cutthroat Kitchen. And yes, for those of you wondering, he's no longer with his girlfriend, who was 19 at the time of season 9. I know, very shocking that didn't work out. Oh man, this next one is going to hurt me, but Elise has done damn well for herself. Even though she would continue to hurt her reputation after coming back for All Stars, she has in some ways embraced her villainous behavior, going down the fitness route, and using her body to make a business out of it, having her own fitness prepackaged food company, and she still appears on many cooking shows and regularly competes in bodybuilding. Fuck man, as a fitness guy myself, I can't help but respect her dedication, but damn it Elise, why are you doing this to me? One of the greatest chefs in Hell's Kitchen history, while Will hasn't exactly gone on to be a celebrity chef or anything like that, it's safe to say he's doing well for himself, working at many fine dining restaurants in the 10 plus years since season 11, and is currently an executive chef in New York, New York. After working for a bit at his prized BLT restaurant, Paul would stick to the BLT style restaurants, working at BLTs in LA and Miami for the next 10 years or so. He is currently the executive chef at Jupiter Grill in Jupiter, Florida, and executive chef at Buccaneer Waterfront Bar. Holy moly, what a hectic lifestyle that must be. He has also come back to Hell's Kitchen on many occasions, even though he hasn't exactly made the best of impressions, after already being a bit of an unlikable winner to many. The 22-year-old executive chef Tavon would become a Hell's Kitchen icon for all the wrong reasons after his disastrous opening night. But how would he do after the show with his whole life ahead of him? Well, it's not been great to say the very least, as he would open his own private chef business called Chef Tave, which has received awful, and I mean awful reviews, bless the guy's heart. One of Hell's Kitchen's most forgettable chefs has lived a quiet life, as Chris would work as a sous chef at the Restaurants Associates before becoming an executive chef in 2016, which presumably keeps him busy to this day. Brianna has had 2 jobs since season 10, as she would return to being a private chef. However, remember how nervous she got when it looked like they were going to have to shave their heads as she was single and looking? Well, she would indeed find her man and eventually get married and have a kid, which is of course a full-time job within itself. Don seemed to be having a good career path after Hell's Kitchen, as he would be an executive chef at Saint's Restaurant up until it closed in 2020 due to COVID. However, there's literally no information about the man since. I mean, I obviously hope he's living his best life, but again, with the stereotypes, dude, of course someone like Don would completely fall off the face of the earth. Danielle and another chef we'll talk about next season went on to have jobs I'm most jealous of, as she would end up working at Yankee Stadium, of course the home of the legendary New York Yankees, as a kitchen supervisor, which is what I assume she did before the show as well. Again, as a big baseball fan, what a dream that would be. She has bounced around from being a sous chef and executive chef throughout her life since then, and would also eventually get married in 2018. One of the Hell's Kitchen contestants to do the best for themselves after the show is, of all people, Guy. How did he become so successful? Well, after he opened his own restaurant called Beyond Sushi, it would do so well that it would expand to 6 locations across Manhattan, New York. Due to this success, he would appear on Shark Tank in season 10 to expand his restaurants even more, and would indeed secure a $1.5 million investment, making him one of Hell's Kitchen's richest contestants. Roshni would continue to be on cooking shows, as like some other chefs we talked about so far, as she would compete on Beat Bobby Flay, would appear on Cutthroat Kitchen for 15 episodes, and compete on Chopped, this time being a chef that won. Honestly, you could say Roshni has had the best career, at least TV cooking show-wise, since Hell's Kitchen, which is pretty interesting. And she's been no slouch in the kitchen either, as she would be an executive chef at a 5-star hotel, be a private chef, wedding caterer, and a traveling chef consultant. After all that hard work, she's currently a baker at a bagel shop in Houston, Texas, which I low-key respect the chillness of that after all the insane hard work she's put in over her life. We continue the trend of chefs doing well in other cooking shows, as Patrick would win over 14 grand in season 11 of Cutthroat Kitchen. On the personal side of things, he would work as an executive chef in Bakersfield before becoming a culinary director in Illinois. Also, fun fact, he is a member of the National Turkey Federation Board. We all know that Royce worked for Ralph prior to season 10, but his life after Hell's Kitchen would take an interesting turn. After starting his own catering company called 3 Lions Corporation, he would move to Thailand to work as a chef and as an international operations specialist, which is really dang cool. Really not much to say about Tiffany other than she would return to Vermont to continue cooking. But I think the most surprising part about Tiffany is she'll get married. Seriously, first Jason Underwood and now Tiffany. Again, y'all, for you feeling like you never find somebody, there is truly always some hope. I will say though, an absolutely perfect full circle moment, Tiffany now goes by the name of Tiffany Gross. Good lord, man, the universe truly has its way of working itself out, I'll tell you what. Kimmy would also, of course, return to her southern roots, where she would also find love shortly after the show, and would even have 3 kids, even though one of them would unfortunately pass away as an infant. Nonetheless, she and her husband would open a catering company, and she would even work at Chili's, which I'm not even going to make fun of. That's a perfect role for her. As of now, she is currently the owner of Premier Crepes. Brian unsurprisingly would use the energy he displayed on the show to do great things in life, as on the cooking side of things, he would expand his private cooking into a business, and this allowed him to open his own barbecue restaurant in 2019, even though it would close 3 years later. He would also become a sales manager, which I presume he does to this day, along with his private cooking. We got another contestant from this season who went on to do many more cooking TV shows, and that is Robin. She of course would return to All Stars, where she would somehow, some way join the 2-time Black Jacket Club. And not only that, but she would win both her respective episodes in Chopped and Cutthroat Kitchen, and compete on Food Network's Last Chef Standing earlier this year. And in general, has actually been a judge for some Food Network shows as well. As for her cooking career, she would open her own food truck, which has had amazing reviews, but was unfortunately sold in 2020, likely due to COVID. But nonetheless, respect where respect is due for Robin for putting in the hustle. We continue the trend here with chefs this season wanting to stay in the spotlight, as Clemens would also appear on Chop, and in Gordon Ramsay's 24 Hours of Hell and Back, and was even offered to come back to All Stars but declined due to health. Nowadays, he owns a food truck called Little Italian Truck and hosts a number of cooking events. Barbie would return to All Stars as well, where she would make even more enemies. But not only has she mended fences with all of them, but she actually mended fences with the likes of Kimmy and Tiffany as well, even showing up to Tiffany's wedding, which just goes to show the type of person Barbie is. In her time since the show, she would also open up her own catering company and has worked for a food truck as a private chef and a restaurant consultant. Dana would go down the Elise route, using her looks and strong body to her advantage, as not only would she become a fitness instructor, which allowed her to leverage the ability to open a healthy eating joint called Pulse Cafe, she also worked as a personal chef, corporate manager, and has since gotten married, and gave birth in 2022. We finally have a bit of a low-key life to talk about now, which I guess makes sense coming from the down-to-earth Justin. But even though he hasn't exactly been in the spotlight, as you can imagine, he's had plenty of success, working as an executive chef and restaurant consultant throughout his life, many of those restaurants earning critical acclaim. He would also get married and give birth to 2 sons and 1 daughter. It's only fitting we end off season 10 with the best resume in Hell's Kitchen history, as after Christina's contract with Ramsay ended, he would hire her to work full-time at many of his restaurants, which allowed Christina to open up many restaurants herself, and in general become a truly prominent figure in the culinary world. And of course, due to all of this, she would be the Red Team's sous chef in seasons 15 and 17 to 22. Nothing really else to say other than Hell's Kitchen's most successful contestant. Nona had one of the better post-Hell's Kitchen careers, at least when it came to running her prize restaurant, as she would run LA Market for over 3 years. Afterwards, she would help mentor others in opening their restaurants, before starting her own catering business, along with another catering business with her husband. And while I don't know what she looks like now, she looked fantastic when she came back in season 11, even if her attitude change was a bit unpleasant. No matter what you think of Sebastian, you cannot deny that he has a passion for cooking. Maybe a bit too passionate as we saw, but still, since season 11, he has put in the work, essentially working as an executive chef in multiple restaurants, and would even open up his own taco food truck. And he would also, of all things, be a chef de cuisine for the New York Islanders. Some people think Gina was a legit plant in season 11 with her behavior and then quitting instantly. And to be honest, when it comes to her life outside of Hell's Kitchen, I could low-key see the argument. As while she is still working in the food industry, it's as an owner of a restaurant, not a cook. Oh, and if you're wondering for an update for Alejandro, unfortunately, I couldn't find anything for him. But I'm sure he's living his best life. Arguably the most forgettable contestant of season 11, Christian returned to his Boston roots as a head chef, which he presumably still does to this day. He also appeared on an episode of Wicked Bites in 2017. Despite what Susan and the audience might think after watching season 11, Danielle isn't just an executive chef of a hot dog stand, as she had returned to her executive chef position before, of all things, becoming a head chef at a history museum. One of the worst chefs in Hell's Kitchen history, Jeremy would go down the route of Gina, where he wouldn't necessarily stay in the kitchen per se, and go down the manager route, be an operations manager, assistant manager, and general manager for multiple different companies. Jessica showed a lot of promise in season 11, and despite her early elimination, she has indeed shined to pretty much her full potential in the 10 plus years since the show. Similar to Danielle the previous season, she would also work in the kitchen for a pro baseball team in New York, this time of course being the Mets. She would also work in a hotel as a sous chef and executive chef, and work in general as an executive chef nowadays. Her success would allow her to open up her own cafe. However, it would unfortunately close in 2017. Similar to Jessica, despite his lackluster run, Dan showed a ton of potential in season 11, and has also done a decent amount of good in his career. He would actually work alongside Ashley from season 15 for a while, and is currently a chef working at a fancy restaurant in Yonkers, New York. Jacqueline said herself after her elimination that cooking is what she wanted to do with her life, and she loves it. And she has indeed been doing that ever since season 11, as she would work as a catering chef, and for a college in New Jersey. As of now, she is currently working as a head chef at Baden's Book Club. Another somewhat forgettable chef this season, Amanda was still obviously very passionate though, and would continue to put in the work post Hell's Kitchen, working as a chef consultant and culinary instructor. And to go along with being an instructor, she also does cooking demonstrations on the side as well. Barrett would use his time on Hell's Kitchen and objectively unique look for a chef to his advantage, and in the best of ways for that matter, as he would start his own charity called Studded Events and Catering. And he would be another HK chef to compete on Cutthroat Kitchen. He is currently an executive chef and a brand ambassador for Chef Works. Ray is nearly 70 years old at the time of writing, but I don't think the guy has slowed down. After season 11, he would return to the Purple Eggplant restaurant before that got shut down in 2019, and is currently an executive chef for a corporation. And fun fact, I don't know if he had an acting career before or after Hell's Kitchen, but he was also in the movie Gone Baby Gone. Michael has lived a pretty quiet life post Hell's Kitchen, as while he hasn't done anything super spectacular or anything, I guess he really hasn't had time to, as he's basically been working nonstop as an executive chef ever since. Hey, the man loves cooking more than his own children, apparently. Makes sense that he would be on the non-stop grind. We all know how passionate Nedra is about food, and yes, she has continued her love for the craft. She became an executive chef for a steak and seafood restaurant before leaving it to start her own meal prep business, with the business being called Pootie Spice. Good God, dude, I absolutely adore Nedra. She has also cooked for many celebrities as her own personal chef. Anthony was just a line cook heading into season 11, but he obviously showed he could be so much more, as he would immediately become a sous chef after the show at a golf club resort and then a steakhouse, before eventually making his way up to executive chef, working at multiple restaurants. Nowadays, he runs a private chef service called Epicurean Creations. Zach took an interesting path post Hell's Kitchen, as instead of working his way up the food chain in the kitchen, he would use his fame from the show and become a bit of a freelance chef, offering his own cooking classes and demonstrations, which has allowed him to cook across the country. He was also apparently asked to come back for Rookies vs. Veterans, but declined, which might explain the imbalance of men and women on the veterans team that season. Susan was of course just a culinary student in season 11, and while definitely one of the weaker black jacket chefs ever, you had to respect the run she went on, and thus made you think she had a great career of cooking ahead of her. However, she would actually return to her former career working in HR, and has been in HR for several businesses, which to be fair, some of them are indeed food businesses, but it doesn't seem she does much of anything cooking-wise anymore these days. Sydney is the definition of a solid chef who just simply gets to work, and has done that for sure since season 11, working as an executive chef and general manager for multiple restaurants in New York. She would be another contestant to be on Chopped, and fun fact, she would actually compete against Michelle, but would lose in the entree round. Man, could you imagine if Sydney won? Maybe she could have been the red team sous chef nowadays instead of Michelle. Or at the very least, that would have been quite the flex. Even though John didn't win season 11, I mean, he essentially is the true winner with how much success he's had. After season 11, Ramsay immediately offered him a job, working as a sous chef for Christina Wilson. Man, what a kitchen that must have been, my God. Oh, and no big deal, he would also be Dana White's private chef for 4 years. He continues to work for big restaurants under Ramsay to this day, and has been brought back in these recent seasons as a mentor for the finalists. And yeah, I think it's safe to say at this point, if Ramsay is ever in need of another sous chef on the Blue Kitchen, John will almost certainly be the next one in line. What an absolutely amazing career for this man. One of the things that makes season 11 at least somewhat bearable is seeing Mary's rise throughout the season, going from some weird butcher to a true head chef. However, despite her insane run, she's actually remained pretty low-key since season 11, as she would return to her career as a butcher. But the big change in Mary's life has been her views on veganism, as she would become fully vegan and now works as a plant-based nutrition coach. Man, you talk about a switch in career paths. My God. Janelle has one of the most infamous post-Hell's Kitchen careers for all the wrong reasons, as she didn't even get her prize restaurant after a failed drug test. Despite that embarrassment though, credit where credit is due, she's essentially worked no less than executive chef throughout her life, and as a restaurant consultant for many successful restaurants. I've been a Gorov defender since the beginning, and that not only should he have not been the first boot, but I truly think he had potential. And he's at least proved me right in real life, as he became a senior executive chef for IMU Restaurants and Catering, and is currently a district food manager for Carnegie Mellon University. Nicole is arguably the least passionate chef in Hell's Kitchen history, and while it's safe to say she hasn't exactly gone out of her way to progress in her career, she's at least stayed in the kitchen, working as a baker to this day. Nicole, of course, wasn't always a cook before Hell's Kitchen, as it was a pretty late career switch, but she has stayed in the industry, returned to being a catering chef, and is now offering personal chef services. It's hard to believe that Mike was a chef instructor with how much of a douche he was on the show, but he appears to still be doing that to this day, even though I definitely would not want someone like him as my instructor, good lord. DeMarco showed a lot of fight in season 12, and I'm glad to see he's doing pretty well for himself these days, as after returning to his executive chef role, he nowadays works for Cisco, a food distribution company. Beth was really scared for her life after being eliminated, but it appears she's doing well for herself as well, even though it's been pretty low-key, as she would become a private chef and currently runs a catering business. We have our first chef in season 12 now who would switch careers in Chris. As of all things, Chris would become a cryptocurrency trader. I definitely did not have that on my bingo card, to say the least. While of course a lot of chefs from Hell's Kitchen went on to have food trucks, Bev was one of the few, if not the only food truck chef to be on the show. And she would return to her truck after season 12. Although she would also expand her career as well, becoming a private chef, and currently runs Fiesta Abobo, a food business that specializes in Filipino dishes. We have one of the more heartbreaking post-Hell's Kitchen careers now in Jessica. It started well enough, as she would work as executive chef for a burger restaurant, and would be another chef to compete on Cutthroat Kitchen. Unfortunately, she would pass away due to a bowel disease in 2018 at the insanely young age of 34. Just freaking brutal. Ralph was definitely a spark plug in the kitchen despite his inconsistencies, but he continues the hard work nowadays, as he would work his way up to being a sous chef and eventually executive chef after season 12. Of all things now, he lives in Anguilla, where I assume he works in the cooking industry there as well, but I don't truly have the info to know for sure. We go back to sadness now with Sandra, as she would be unfortunately diagnosed with cancer shortly after season 12 aired, and thus there's no real info on what she did job-wise after the show. But I unfortunately think since she knew her time was limited, she didn't feel the need to work, and instead took part in a ton of cooking competitions. However, it wouldn't even be cancer that did her in, as she would pass away in 2022 of a sudden heart attack at just 46. Despite being nearly 50, Richard was an absolute workhorse in the kitchen, and that attitude has stuck with him despite being over 60 now, as he would offer catering and private chef services, released his own line of pasta sauces, helped launch a restaurant, and has also competed on other food shows, once again being on Cutthroat Kitchen, and Get Rich or Die Frying. The true winner of season 12, as he puts it, Anton has done exactly what you would expect a guy like Anton to do, as he would open his own restaurant and call it Axtons. Hey, it seems to be working out well, but good lord man, this guy truly does love himself. I mean, you can't really knock that, I guess. He also runs a catering company and gives cooking demos. Gabriel will be another contestant to be on Cutthroat Kitchen, but I believe he is the contestant to have the most success, winning nearly $55,000 from the show. Which, hey, if that's a trade-off for getting kicked out of Hell's Kitchen right before the Black Jackets, I'm sure he'd take that trade every time. He currently is a private chef and owns a food truck, and has since gotten married and has given birth to 2 daughters. No matter what you think of Keisha, she did show a ton of promise at just 23 years old, and since season 12, she would open up her own restaurant called Urban County Kitchen, which has led to great reviews. She also has her own cookbook called Cooking is My Therapy. And again, not even being 40 yet, she still has tons of time in this world to do even more in the cooking world. After her shocking outrage and quit, Joy has been pretty low-key, working as a private chef and returning to her catering company. However, the most notable thing about Joy is she has been very vocal about her time on the show, feeling like the producers were rigging the season for Scott to win. You know, I'm not sure if that's enough of a reason to quit after one freaking mistake, but I don't know, her life, not mine. One of the most beloved chefs in Hell's Kitchen history, Rochelle, as you'd expect, has been perfectly happy in just being a catering chef. However, we all remember when Rochelle got outcasted for wanting to start a family, right? Well, she would indeed marry, but I don't think she has any children. But nonetheless, I'm sure she's living her best life, or at the very least, I hope to God she is. Despite her age and look, Melanie proved herself to be a damn good chef, one of the more underrated final boosts in the show's history. After the show, she would work as a sous chef in many restaurants, and was even offered a spot on All Stars but declined. She also still looks absolutely amazing after all these years, proving that you can look good and be a chef. Hey, Sharon from season 4 was onto something. As we saw, Jason went from a line cook in season 9 to being promoted to sous chef by season 12. And that seems to be what he's doing to this day, along with helping run his family's wine business. Scott's an interesting winner, as while he hasn't exactly had the success, say, Rock or Christina Wilson, he's certainly been no slouch. After turning down the head chef position he won, he would co-found BLT Foods Las Vegas, and then open his own restaurant in Las Vegas in 2018. And he's been another chef that Ramsay has brought back numerous times to give a new crop of chefs some pointers, given that he is the ultimate underdog, of course. and would also appear on another Ramsay cooking show. That one with his daughter, obviously called Matilda and Ramsay Bunch. Despite being a pretty underrated alpha first boot in the grand scheme of things, JP responded to this lackluster run well, as he would actually become a sous chef at the University Club in Boston, and is currently a sous chef at Fork and Vine. Janae seemed like a larger-than-life character, and despite her quick exit, she has lived a pretty low-key life, as she worked her way up to being a sous chef, which I believe she still does to this day. Deneen was just a culinary student in season 13, so you really didn't know what was in store for her going forward, especially after her awful run in season 13. But she has not only stayed in the industry, but has built a damn good resume, working her way up to sous chef and eventually executive chef, and is currently a sales coordinator as well. I don't know if it's been a full-on career switch or not, but she has also since gotten married and had a kid, so it makes sense if she needed something more stable. The closest friend of Sterling, JR has thankfully had a great career since season 13, as he would become a chef instructor and event host for an online cooking show. He also owns a restaurant in Maryland called Kitchen Cray. Katie had an interesting life post season 13, as she would actually be a head cocktail maker for a while, before eventually being the co-founder of The Hang Up, a service that offers meals and cocktails. No matter what you think of Caitlin, she definitely came across as a fighter, and despite having ups and downs in her life after Hell's Kitchen, you can't knock her for trying. After her old restaurant job shut down, she said F it and opened her own restaurant, which would unfortunately shut down after less than a year. Nowadays, she's a general manager for a Protein Fit Kitchen, and has also since gotten married and given birth to a daughter as well, so good stuff there. Despite Ashley staying in the cooking industry for a bit after season 13, she'll be another chef to switch careers, as she now works at US Bank in Minnesota. While I may not like Steve, and for that matter, not a lot of people do, he's lived a respectable life since season 13, as after returning to his old job after the show, he would eventually become executive chef at Alexandria's Tequila Not Taco, which keeps him busy to this day. Frank had a lot of success at the young age of 26 before season 13, and has continued to do well for himself. He would be an executive chef for years after the show in New York, but nowadays works for himself, becoming a freelance chef for Framboyas Catering. Aaron quit Hell's Kitchen because he said winning the show wasn't going to get him any closer to his goals, and while that was obviously a massive cop-out, credit to him, he's worked hard after the show. He worked as a sous chef all around Boston before settling down at the Ledger restaurant in Salem, Massachusetts. But I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, had he won season 13, he would be a lot better off nowadays. I'm just saying. Similar to Frank, Fernando had a ton of success under his belt at just 28, and since Hell's Kitchen, he's continued to work as an executive chef in fancy hotels across the Florida area. To the absolute surprise of nobody, Sterling probably has the coolest and most selfless post-Hell's Kitchen career. He works as a cook for a cafeteria in Tennessee to give back to kids across the state who are struggling, and also give back to the hospital that saved his mom and sister's life. Again, man, being as famous as he is, he could have easily gone the celebrity status, but instead is doing what truly feels right to him. God freaking bless this man, dude. Holy moly. Despite being one of the most forgettable Black Jacket chefs ever, Santos did some good stuff in season 13, and has continued to work as an executive chef throughout his life. And despite being so forgettable, he would also appear on other cooking shows, such as Beat Bobby Flay, and a first one here, competing on Food Network's Holiday Baking Championship. After season 13, Roe would become a head chef and general manager for a cafe, and then after season 18, she would become an executive chef at City Tavern. Oh, and yeah, in case you did forget, she did indeed come back for Rookies vs. Veterans. Hard to believe, I know. Jennifer would work at the Cuba Libre restaurant and rum bar before moving to do some hotel work, and is currently an executive chef. She also runs a macaron company called Le Mac. Sade is one of the best final boots in Hell's Kitchen history, and likely would have been in the finale had she been a bit older. But despite not going as far as she could have, she would do well for herself. She would become a personal chef for her own catering business, and continues to offer catering services and meal delivery services to this day. Bryant would have a pretty low-key life for runner-up, as he would continue to be a sous chef, but now currently owns his own private chef business, where he offers private in-chef home dining. Latasha would actually work at her prized restaurant of Gordon Ramsay Pub and Grill for a year before eventually becoming a private chef, which she still does as her main occupation to this day. She also does pop-up dining events here and there and cooking demonstrations. Bless Chris's heart, but after her all-time bad showing in season 14, she returned to her quiet life with her food truck, which to be fair has received good reviews. And honestly, good for her for being content with this life. Cameron is an all-time forgettable contestant and has been low-key in real life as well, although he would progress in his career it seems, as he works at the Yale Club in New York City. Michael has truly become an underrated all-time bad donkey chef in Hell's Kitchen, dare I say even on par with Krissa. But I'll be damned, he's done well for himself. He would leave his job at the senior center and become an executive chef, director of operations, and chef consultant at multiple restaurants and hotels in the 10 plus years since season 14. And as of now, is an executive chef at the Nash Casino. Mika is an interesting figure in Hell's Kitchen in that, yeah, she's very forgettable, but has an all-time iconic elimination. After season 14, she would become a kitchen manager, which she presumably does to this day, and best of all has gotten married, and now goes by Mika Harris. Despite being the worst chef of season 14, Monique obviously changed her attitude around at least a little bit, and hopefully use the success of her fellow season 14 contestants to fuel her, as she would eventually work her way up to being an executive chef, and has her own meal prep delivery called Meals and Mo. I do have to wonder though if one of the dishes is Mo's pasta. First things first when it comes to Brendan, they now go by they, which I actually just learned while making this video. But yeah, while Millie may not like it, Brendan has continued their success, opening up a restaurant, working as an executive chef at multiple other restaurants, and appearing on Beat Bobby Flay despite losing in the first round. They would also get married a year after season 14 aired and have 3 boys. Sarah would have one of the more interesting post-Hell's Kitchen careers, as she's the first chef I've covered so far that would step away from cooking and get back into accounting, only to then return back to the kitchen sometime later, working today as a private chef. But I do believe that is more so a part-time thing, and her main gig is now working as a CPA. As we know, Brett will return in Rookies vs. Veterans and damn near won the season, and with him being Brett, he has done a ton outside the show as well, as you'd expect. He would work as both an executive and private chef, and in general, become a bit of a celebrity chef, at least when it comes to local towns and cities around him. Heck, after season 18, he would even be featured on Lifestyle magazine, so there's that. Starting to notice a bit of a trend with this talented season, but Adam would be yet another chef this season to work as an executive chef in multiple restaurants after the show. But now is currently a director of culinary operations for a restaurant in Trenton, New Jersey. Christine has, of all people, done a ton of things since the show, as she would also take the Brett route and become a bit of a local celebrity, appearing on multiple local television and radio stations. She has published several recipes, competed in and won an episode of Chopped, and currently works as a private chef and chef consultant. Also, she would actually get engaged to season 18 contestant Chris not too long ago. Not surprised at all here with Randy's post-Hell's Kitchen career, as he would become a banquet chef at Dave & Buster's. And I can only imagine the now nearly 60-year-old man is living his absolute best life at that job. Allison is one of the more underrated great chefs in the history of the show, and after Hell's Kitchen, she would work at a Mexican restaurant before later becoming a kitchen manager. However, in 2017, she had moved to Australia with her boyfriend and eventually get married, though it's unclear if she's still cooking down under or not. Despite coming back to All Stars and of course having a horrible showing, Josh objectively has a pretty cool post-Hell's Kitchen life, as he's been another HK chef to join the acting world. But not just acting, he's actually been a stunt performer as well, being a stunt performer in The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so you know he wasn't scared of the opening troll in season 14. But yeah, as far as cooking-wise, I don't think he's up to much, or even anything job-wise for that matter, as the only real thing that's out there of what he's doing is that he also bartends. We all know the biggest thing about Nick post-season 14 was his comeback for All-Stars, and for all intents and purposes, being the best chef that season. And of course should have won, and who knows how much different his life would have been at that point. Still though, he's been no slouch, as before coming back to All-Stars, he would work as an executive chef and house manager. And after All Stars, he co-founded his own catering company. He and his husband would also adopt a daughter, which is so freaking cool. After the two had a fun rivalry in season 14, and of course Megan seeing firsthand how good he was, Millie would work alongside Megan at her prize restaurant of Gordon Ramsay Pub and Grill in Caesars Atlantic City, before of course coming back to All Stars with another 4th place finish. He would actually go back to Gordon Ramsay Pub and Grill afterwards, even though Megan was no longer running things, before eventually settling down and becoming a chef at a Table for Three, a restaurant in Pennsylvania. Hate on Michelle all you want, but she'll just laugh back at you with all her success. Even before coming back to All Stars, she would work at one of Wolfgang Puck's restaurant. But yes, after her indeed controversial win, Michelle wouldn't have a forgettable post-winning career to say the least. Unfortunately, things did start out pretty bad for her, as she would eventually quit her prize restaurant due to all the abuse she took from these quote fans. But Ramsay was still so impressed by her that she would still work for him as culinary development executive chef for Gordon Ramsay North American Group in Dallas, Texas. And of course, she would be named the Red Team sous chef starting in season 23, which is a position I can see her holding on to for a long time. Despite T having an awful return to Hell's Kitchen in season 18, arguably the best runner-up of all time, has done a shit ton to say the least. Before season 18, she would continue to work as an executive chef, and after season 18, she would not only continue to work in this position at Radford University, but also work as a traveling chef, which appears to be her full-time job to this day. She would also open her own restaurant in 2019 to amazing reviews, but it would unfortunately get shut down in 2020 due to COVID. Despite being the Hell's Kitchen GOAT, Megan has remained relatively quiet all things considered. It's not like she's slowed down per se, as she continues to work at fancy restaurants and executive chef to this day, but not quite the postseason trajectory that you might have expected. Despite being Hell's Kitchen's most invisible contestant objectively, Mark didn't let his bad run on the show stop him, as he worked his way up to being a sous chef at Nordstrom, which he appears to still be doing to this day. He's also found love since the show as well, getting married in 2022, and he would even take up golfing, becoming a member of an amateur golf club. Sharkina has had an interesting story, but not for the best of reasons, as she would actually sue her employers for failing to hold up her position as a personal chef while filming season 15, along with some other incidents. Despite this though, she continues to be a personal chef to this day, and also offers meal prep services, and is a cake maker. Vanessa already had a unique job entering Hell's Kitchen, the only airport chef to ever be on the show, and she's continued with her interesting occupation since season 15, as she would become a festival chef for Coachella and various other festivals, and is currently a post-production chef for Sony Pictures. Who would have thunk it? After her rough time in season 15, Mies seems to have changed careers, as after the show, she became a consultant for a real estate agency. However, she does appear to work as a chef for a catering company, so I guess she hasn't completely left cooking, just it's obviously not her full-time thing. She would also make her own crafts and sell them online, and even though she was married before season 15, she didn't have any children at the time, but has since had 4 with her husband, which has of course kept her busy as well. Speaking of a horrible time on the show, that was indeed the case for Kevin, one of the worst chefs in the history of the show. He would return to his job as a culinary manager before eventually moving to the Metabasis Canoe Club, where I assume he is also a manager to this day. Alan would return to his sous chef position after season 15, and while it's unclear if he still does cooking at least part-time today, as of now, he is a business consultant for NC LLC. Interesting to me the amount of chefs who have gone into the business world, for sure. Eddie is one of the more underrated, cool, and nice guys in Hell's Kitchen history, and he's continued to be nothing but an absolute sweetheart outside of the show, as his main thing after Hell's Kitchen was working as a consultant to help relaunch restaurants, even if he had no prior working relationship with them. Like, how cool is that? He would then make it his full-time job to be the healthcare provider for his father for 3 years, who obviously meant so much to him, before he unfortunately passed away in November 2022. He is back in the kitchen now, and is currently a manager for a winery in Philadelphia. After Hassan showed so much promise in season 15, he would do well for himself, as he started his own private catering business and food truck, with both of them keeping him busy to this day. He'll be another chef to appear on Chopped and finish as the runner-up. And he also got into a bit of a confrontation with season 16 contestant Matt, but I'll talk more about that when we get to the latter. One of the more underrated chefs personality-wise to be on the show, Joe, as you'd expect, has been perfectly content with his life, continuing to be a sous chef to this day, and I'm sure he shows up to work every day absolutely ready to go. Chad already had a ton of success prior to Hell's Kitchen, working at many fine dining restaurants. However, it was all as a sous chef. But after season 15, he would work his way up to being an executive chef, and then eventually a chef de cuisine. Nowadays, not only is he still working as an executive chef, but he also co-owns a restaurant with his wife, who also works as a pastry chef. Jacqueline infamously had only been cooking professionally for 3 months prior to Hell's Kitchen, so would she continue to be a chef after the show? Well, as a matter of fact, she would, still working as a head chef to this day. But of all things, she also works with special needs children, which who would have thunk that after watching her literally attack people in season 15? We have probably the most satisfying post-Hell's Kitchen career story now, as after his horrible comments on the show, Frank would get fired from his job at the Marines, where he would then have the audacity to say that they were taken out of context. Good lord, dude, this guy's an absolute douchebag. He still does cook to this day, though, working as a chef de partie. Dana would return to her catering business after season 15 and become a kitchen manager as well. She would also eventually make her way to an executive chef status in 2017, but unfortunately, the restaurant she worked for would get shut down. I believe her catering is still a primary business to this day, but not totally sure. She would also be one of many contestants to appear on Beat Bobby Flay. Amanda's life would revolve around Hell's Kitchen after her first run ended, as not only would she work with Anthony from season 11 for a while, but of course she returned to Hell's Kitchen 2 years later for All Stars. She would stay on TV though, being another contestant to appear on Chopped, and one of the few that actually won. In her personal life, she works as a manager for her cafe after All Stars ended, and is currently a chef instructor. Jared would of course be another season 15 chef whose life essentially revolved around Hell's Kitchen for 2 years. As between filming, the season's airing, and then coming back for All Stars, I can only imagine what a whirlwind must have been for these season 15 contestants. But yeah, Jared would continue to work as an executive chef throughout, and is currently a director of culinary arts and traveling chef. He and his wife also adopted a baby boy, who they fostered for 16 months. Again, between all what Ashley went through in Hell's Kitchen and her personal life, it really is amazing how good she's doing for herself. She would open up her own restaurant after season 15, but it would unfortunately close in early 2017. As mentioned, she worked with Dan from season 11 for a while, and as of now, she is currently a cook at a restaurant in New York and offers private chef services. Despite not winning season 15, Kristen would still work for the prize restaurant, but as a chef turnit, which is still obviously an amazing gig. This led to her eventually becoming a sous chef at the International Smoke at MGM Grand in Las Vegas. She also has had some insane connections, as not only would she work with Trenton, but she literally hired Ellie, who both of course would go on to win future Hell's Kitchen seasons. As of now, she's executive sous chef at Red's at Thousand Oaks, a restaurant in Michigan. I've mentioned a couple of chefs in this series who are on Hell's Kitchen's Vice's dark side of reality TV, and Aria was the one most vocal throughout the episode, with her saying that being a head chef for a Gordon Ramsay restaurant wasn't really about the work. It was more so about representing a brand and taking pictures, and using that to take yourself to even bigger heights in the culinary world. As of now, she's a private chef and offers culinary services. Pat Morso had an insane resume before the show, having of course a great career in the kitchen and even competing on Jeopardy, where he actually won an episode. Since season 16 though, he'll become a manager at Performance Food Service, and just recently opened his own restaurant in New Jersey, so best of luck to him on that. Gennaro was already not well liked by the fanbase for his lack of care, even though it was kind of funny to see his contrast to someone like Johnny. Nonetheless, he would continue to make a bad impression for himself, getting in trouble with the law after the show with things such as disorderly conduct and theft. But nonetheless, nobody was happy to see him pass away at the super young age of 32. Less than 4 years after season 16 aired. Jessica, of course, infamously essentially eliminated herself to get away from the season, and honestly, good for her there. I could have seen, had she stayed a bit longer, that she might have lost her love for cooking. But yeah, she would work her way up to becoming a kitchen manager, and has since gotten married and had a baby boy. Gia was not just bad, but a very unlikable chef in season 16, which is something you can say about a majority of these chefs. But she's at least keeping busy nowadays. She is still in charge of her own catering services, but also works in customer service and sales for Sandana Technologies. And I'm just going to say it, I have a hard time imagining someone like Gia being the best at that profession, but hey, I guess it's paying her the bills. Aaron showed so much talent at his young age, and again, while his elimination was BS, at least he got out of there while he could to keep his passion for cooking. And to the surprise of no one, he has indeed progressed in the industry, eventually making his way up to being an executive chef, which he does to this day. And I can only imagine what all else he'll do in the industry in the years to come. Despite being super forgettable, that's honestly not a bad thing on a season like this. And Aziza would be another HK contestant to appear on Chopped. As for her personal life, she's a private chef, teaches culinary classes, and also does pop-up dining events. We got some good news now here when it comes to Johnny, as while he did have decent success post-season 16, eventually going as far to owning a cookie shop, he no longer is in the cooking industry, and currently works as a roofer. Which again, whether he likes the career more or not doesn't matter. Someone like Johnny just simply should not be around other chefs in the kitchen flat out. Despite his explosive exit, Koopa has kept a pretty low profile, likely smart to not associate himself with his time on the season, I guess. But I believe he is still a kitchen manager, working in the Ohio area. Shayna has remained very busy in the decades since season 16, working as executive chef, and owner, caterer, and offering meal prep and private chef services. She currently now is the owner of Mad Apples, a farm-type restaurant in Pennsylvania. Matt hasn't done much of anything since season 16, with the most noteworthy thing he has done is continue to prove what an awful human being he is, sending racist insults towards season 15 contestant Hassan. Jesus, I don't like to wish bad on anyone, but I truly think the universe will catch up to Matt at some point, like it always does in the end. After Ramsay brutally made Wendy suffer by going to the blue team, she would return to her job as a line cook, but you can't find much info about her nowadays, so hopefully this isn't a case where she lost her passion for cooking due to her time on the show. One of the few great people on this season's blue team, Devin will return to his previous position as an assistant kitchen manager, but he would also expand his career, offering personal culinary lessons, and would eventually work his way up to be an executive chef and general manager for 2 different restaurants, which I can only imagine how busy that keeps him to this day. He would also get married on March 27, 2020, which, hey, good for him, but that wedding must have been interesting given the timeline, to say the very least. While Andrew has done well for himself since the show, working as executive chef, and even opening his own restaurant before it closed in 2022, the biggest thing I'm sure y'all want to know is his relationship status. And yes, his fiancée would indeed eventually leave him shortly after season 16 aired, although he would continue to play the field after the show, which, how any girl could trust him at that point is beyond me. After her great underdog run in season 16, Kimberly would become an owner of a catering company, but would eventually begin working at a sushi restaurant in California, which would change her life, as she has now become a bit of a sushi chef, as she prepares sushi to this day for the Back Alley Grill, and even offers sushi cooking classes. She was also offered to come back to All Stars, but declined due to it being so soon. Again, while I know we may not like some of these contestants, what happened to Paulie is truly tragic, as literally only 3 months after season 16 finished airing, he would pass away from an accidental drug overdose. Despite her amazing run, Heidi's lived a pretty quiet life, which makes sense given she's still living in Maine. You can only do so much there, I guess. But she is living her best life, it seems, as she is currently a culinary arts teacher now. After Heather's first time on the show, she would continue to work as a sous chef, but it was after coming back for Rookies vs. Veterans where she truly shined as a chef, as not only would she, of course, join the exclusive 2-time Black Jacket Club, but she would work her way up to being an executive chef, and also offer private chef services. I will say, though, it's unfortunately not all been great for Heather, as she has gotten a lot of flack since the show for her romance with Andrew, even though she knew nothing about Andrew's fiancé till she showed up. Truly sad, and again, people, first of all, use some common sense, and second of all, for God's sakes, treat these people like humans. Ryan has one of the saddest post winner, heck, flat out one of the saddest post Hell's Kitchen stories ever. As far as her career goes, while she would work for a prize restaurant, it would be as a sous chef, not head chef. But Ryan has battled so much since the show, as in 2019, she would get assaulted by her boyfriend. Then she would get COVID during the height of it in March 2020 and barely survived that, but still suffers from long-term effects to this day, eventually needing heart surgery. Then, as if that wasn't all brutal enough, she'd be diagnosed with grade 3 metastatic breast cancer, which she is battling to this day. My goodness, for the love of God, guys, give your praise to this poor woman. Holy moly, how anyone could possibly go through all this is beyond me. Scott, of course, made the very bad decision of leaving his restaurant to film season 18, only to get sent back after 2 days after an all-time bad showing. But despite his success seeming unfathomable, he at the very least seems to be doing well for himself these days, as he's actually become a chef instructor since the show. And he also owns Evoke Hospitality Consulting. Not only is Chris doing well culinary-wise for himself nowadays, as he is currently a chef de cuisine for the Ward 8 restaurant, but his mental health seems to be doing miles better as well, as he found the love of his life in fellow Hell's Kitchen contestant Christine from season 14, so all the best to them. Gizzy showed a ton of potential despite her early exit, and she has made the most of her career for sure. After returning to be a sous chef, Gizzy would eventually start her own meal plan business. However, she is also the owner and executive chef of Atlanta Personal Chef Service. She also has since gotten married, and is now known as Gizzy Rollins, a pretty badass name. Despite Scott Lee being an absolute douchebag in his professional world, and instead of being a sous chef or an executive chef, he's been more so a personal chef, and even offers his own cooking classes, which again, you wouldn't expect with that kind of attitude. He also appeared on the 53rd season of Chopped, and would also be in 6 episodes of Real Housewives of Atlanta. Jose took a very similar route to Scott Lee, going more so the personal route when it came to his cooking career, working as a personal chef and offering private cooking lessons. He would also appear on another cooking TV show a la Scott Lee, and a show that we've seen a bunch of chefs compete on and beat Bobby Flay, in which he would actually win both rounds. Kane would also follow in the footsteps of the likes of Scotty and Jose in the personal chef route, although it's obviously not surprising, given just how awesome a person she is. But yes, she is currently a personal chef and offers cooking classes through her company called Always Homemade. Mata, of course, infamously left season 18 to help Baton Rouge in the culinary world, and he has done just that, as not only is his restaurant Baton Rouge receiving great business and excellent reviews, but Mata has hosted numerous cooking charity events to raise money and, in general, help the food scene in Baton Rouge. And while I'm obviously no local to the area, I do imagine Mato has done quite a lot for the city. Surprisingly, the Sparkplug Mia has actually been pretty low-key since season 18, also becoming a private chef, but has also become a food photographer, as evidenced by her Instagram. But again, she obviously made a great impression on Ramsay, as even though she doesn't work for him in any of his restaurants, she has appeared on Ramsay's channel multiple times in the segments Ramsay and 10. Despite being the first ever Hell's Kitchen contestant to get eliminated before cooking and dinner service, and bound depression at the time as well, that has not stopped Kenneth in the slightest in his culinary career. He would continue to work as a personal chef, and would even make appearances on local TV cooking stations. He's also a culinary arts teacher at Mastery Charter High School. Despite not seeming to really care about cooking, Elliot continues to be a private chef to this day, and also has his own catering and cooking classes. He also, of all things, sells fishing supplies and cookery essentials as a bit of a side hustle online. One of the most forgettable chefs ever, Fabiola has remained very low-key, becoming a personal chef, which keeps her busy nowadays. She is also a photographer, which is pretty neat. Drew has done a crap ton in the relatively short time since season 19, working as a private and executive chef, a consultant, published his own cookbook, and is currently a head chef and culinary arts teacher. Also, he's helped me get a ton of chefs on my podcast, so a massive shout out to Drew for that. Another forgettable contestant from this season, Brittany will return to her original position as an executive sous chef, before eventually transferring to her hometown's college of Morehead State University, where she currently works as an executive chef. I actually know a couple of people who've gone to college there the past couple of years, so I wonder if she's ever cooked for them. We got our first one here for the series, as after season 19, Peter would actually open a digital food truck. I assume a unique way to go about this business in the COVID era. I'm not sure if it's still open now, or again, it was just a way to make money during those tough times, but that's still really cool for sure. But since COVID, he's worked as an executive chef at multiple restaurants, and hopefully he isn't nearly as stressed at those jobs like he was in Hell's Kitchen. Josh had a lot of potential for sure, despite his somewhat quick exit, but he has proven himself, working as an executive chef before eventually becoming a private chef today, which I assume he took this route to spend more time with his daughter, to which he and his wife gave birth to in 2024. Speaking of potential, Siam was oozing with that at such a young age on this talented season, and she's already up to some great stuff. She would open up her own catering company, and very interestingly, would open up a business called Mycene and Bud, providing cannabis-infused meals. Did not see that coming, to say the very least. But hey, good on her. As far as her professional life, Lauren has been pretty low-key, returning to her catering company. However, she definitely has used her good looks to her advantage to appear on numerous other cooking shows, such as Marimoto's Sushi Master, Chopped, and Supermarket Steakhouse, the latter which she would win her respective episode. Adam has one of the best post-Hell's Kitchen lives ever, as he would open not one, not two, but 3 restaurants in the time since, and would actually win Milwaukee's Best Chef in 2019 and 2020. Again, Ramsay, I love you of course, but why in the world did Adam get eliminated over Mark? But speaking of, credit to Mark, he's done very well for himself since season 19. He would work in multiple restaurants around the New Mexico area before becoming a director of culinary, and is currently an executive chef. He would actually even be a James Beard Foundation nominee in 2024. Jordan would actually open up a sandwich trailer in 2021, but would eventually get shut down, again likely due to the time period. But she's still been very busy since then, working as a director of food and beverage and a sous chef, and is currently a traveling chef. It wasn't a matter of if Nikki would be successful, but just how successful she would be after season 19. And unbelievably, I think she's already passed expectations. She would actually end up working with Amber after Hell's Kitchen, before working her way up to be an executive chef. And she is also currently the CEO of Yellow Jacket Chefware Incorporated. As mentioned, Amber would work alongside Nikki for a while, and in general, work as an executive chef in multiple restaurants and hotels. As of now, though, she is actually a culinary director for Table for One Hospitality. Cody really used the fame and love he got from the show to his advantage, as he would become a food content creator, which I imagine is where the majority of his income comes from. But he also does work as a chef consultant and has done many pop-up dining events. One of Hell's Kitchen's most beloved chefs, Declan would actually go down the more low-key route, becoming a private chef. But being the lovable guy he is offered a ton of opportunities to learn from the Irishman, offering dining services and cooking classes. He would also continue to be on TV, appearing on Beat Bobby Flay, and twice on Guy's Grocery Games. Mary Lou would go down the route of her partner in crime, building a massive following and using it to her advantage, although she's taken more so of a lifestyle approach as opposed to being a flat-out food content creator. She would also be a cosplay chef with Geeks and Grubs, and now currently works as a personal chef. Corey would be one of many chefs who wouldn't take up the position of a prized restaurant, and instead use her success from the show to launch her own salsa brand, Mama Corey Salsa, and has continued to offer private chef services, which keeps her busy these days. After a quick exit from season 20, Ava has been another pretty chef to use her looks to her advantage, as she would start her own meal prep company called Ava Flavas, and is also a part-time chef instructor. But yeah, it does seem like her absolute passion is bodybuilding and modeling, generally giving Elise a run for her money for most ripped female chef to be on the show. Arguably the worst chef in Hell's Kitchen history, one big reason why Matthew was so bad was due to him not even really being a trained chef, more of a food content creator, which he does continue to do to this day, credit to him, working as a content manager and even have his own YouTube channel. Despite being an awful chef during a short time on Young Guns, Jay has actually done quite a lot for himself, as he would open 2 restaurants and a food truck, even though the truck would eventually get shut down. He is also a personal chef as well despite all of this, and even has connections to Coca-Cola. Despite being an early boot and forgettable chef, it appears Alex has also really gone into the social media game, posting his food recipes and content online, which, hey, it is Young Guns after all, might as well play with these stereotypes. But it appears as nowadays his main occupation is working as a sous chef at Sienna Tavern. Morgana would be another unexpected and young chef to open up her own restaurant. Well, actually more so of a bar, but still very impressive nonetheless, as you wouldn't expect someone like Morgana of all people to do something like this. She also currently works at a resort in Connecticut. While Peyton hasn't opened up his own restaurant or anything like that yet, he's been another young gun chef to indeed progress in his career, as he would work as a personal chef and open up his own food truck, before eventually becoming an executive chef, which keeps him busy to this day. Despite his awful meltdown, Kevin still showed a ton of promise at his young age, and would continue to work as an executive chef after the show. However, he would actually eventually step away from the culinary world, going down the engineer route and working at HITT Contracting. Hey, I'm sure he's doing well for himself, but I do have to wonder if a big reason why he quit cooking was due to getting PTSD from his fish station meltdown. Keanu has been another chef to show some serious maturity for her age, although then again, most of these chefs are in their late 20s, maybe even early 30s now, which is pretty crazy. But nonetheless, she still works her private catering business, and is the owner of Life Support Foods. Victoria would quickly rise from junior sous chef to the executive chef post Hell's Kitchen, before eventually becoming a production supervisor for Azoria Foods. While Josie has remained a private chef since her season, and has done a bunch of pop-up dining services, she has also started her own business. And you guessed it, it's a vegan catering service. Again, dude, I truly do admire these chefs who took what the show gave them and ran with it. I mean, you might as well. After Hell's Kitchen, it seems Sam has worked full-time at a company called Sodexo, as he's worked at their catering company as a general manager, and is nowadays back in the kitchen, working as their executive chef. Go ahead, take a wild guess at what fellow vegan Emily has been up to since the show. Yep, that's right. Her private chef business is mostly focused on making plant-based foods. Again, just freaking amazing, honestly. Like, seriously. She also gives online and in-person cooking classes and demonstrations, where I don't think it's strictly vegan dishes, but again, I wouldn't bet against it. Antonio has lived a pretty low-key life compared to most of his peers, which is ironic given he was one of the biggest personalities this season. But nonetheless, he's still been very busy and successful, working as an executive chef in multiple restaurants since season 20. I think everybody is excited to see what all Steve has been up to since his legendary showing in season 20 at just 21. And it's been a lot to say the least. He worked his way up to being an executive chef, offers private chef services, was a culinary director, and is currently the culinary executive of the Black Hen. And again, he's not even 30 yet. My God, this man can do so much more. It's kind of scary in the best of ways. Once again here, we got another pretty chef from Hell's Kitchen using her looks, game, and general time on the show to her advantage, as Brynn has not only been a content creator, but in general literally works as a social media coordinator and a field marketing representative for multiple brands, including some food brands. Kaya was of course very passionate and would eventually also open up her own private chef business called Kaya's Creations, and is currently a head chef at the Bacchuni restaurant. And she also has gotten married since the show. The runner-up Megan would work at a bunch of interesting places post-season 20, working at a golf club resort, a hotel, and is now currently working as an executive chef in New Haven. Trenton would have one of the more successful careers for a New Era winner, as he would actually work for his prize restaurant for a year, before eventually working at the Paris Las Vegas Hotel and Casino. He would also help with opening a new Guy Fieri restaurant in 2023, and is currently the executive chef at the Blue Duck restaurant, which is where he was actually originally working before season 20. Oh, and of course he would come back to Hell's Kitchen for his, quote, wedding, which ironically led to one of the worst services of the new era. Despite being the first boot, and a forgettable one at that in season 21, Charlene has actually had a pretty good presence since the show, having a massive online following with nearly 50,000 Insta followers, but also would appear on Chopped and Guy's Grocery Games. For her professional life, she still works as a private chef, and get used to hearing that throughout this season. The infamous shark-bait Zeus has lived a pretty chill life, all things considered, since season 21, working as a corporate chef and offering cooking classes. And I bet he's still battling off sharks to this day. After it seems that O'Shea's restaurant would unfortunately get shut down during his time of filming season 21, he would begin instead working as a private chef, and also offers catering and cooking classes. We continue the trend of the 40-somethings this season being private chefs, as that has indeed been the case for Nicole since season 21. Again, like people always say, it makes sense why this season was so lopsided. The 40-somethings obviously hadn't been on the line forever compared to the 20-somethings. But on that note, the first 20-something this season to be eliminated was Alyssa, who also ironically might have struggled for not being on the line in some time, as she was already an executive chef by 23 during season 21, which is obviously still very impressive, of course. And after the show, she returned to her executive chef position and is now currently a chef de cuisine at the Butcher Cellar, working with Alejandro. However, this just isn't some coincidence, because yes, shortly after the show, Alejandro and Alyssa will begin dating, with the two of them giving birth to their first child earlier this year. The first Hell's Kitchen baby as well as of writing, so good for them. But yeah, back to the usual now with Mindy, although a bit of a unique twist here, as she is also a teacher along with being a chef, which I'm surprised we haven't seen more of, given it would make sense since a chef, teaches people cooking, so you would think if they knew a subject they could also be a teacher. But yeah, Mindy is a personal chef to this day and offers meal services. Ileana was a sous chef entering Hell's Kitchen and is still a sous chef now, but I can only imagine she'll be an executive chef in no time, and who knows what she'll do from there. That's the thing about doing these Where Are They Now videos for recent seasons, as I imagine Ileana's resume will be massive 5 years from now compared to now. Despite being super bland, Vlad has shown much more personality in real life, as he actually has his own podcast called Late Night with Chefs Podcast, and is a vlogger under the name of Cooking with Vlad, as you might expect. For his professional work, though, he is a travel chef. AB has remained busy since season 21, and hey, when you got 9 kids, you gotta do what you gotta do to support them. But yeah, he is currently an executive chef and actually owns his own healthy meal prep company called Kitchen Monster Creations. Again, while some of these younger chefs may take a while to do something massive, some of them have indeed already done some great things, and that's been the case for Brett. After continuing to work as an executive chef, he would open his own restaurant called Bininger Schwartz last year, so best of luck to him. Sakari would go down more so the business route despite it still being food related, but he would be the founder of Noble Promise Studios, a company that combines food and fashion, and is the creator of Cyber Green Juice. To go along with fashion, he also owns a clothing brand called Peach and Parmesan, the perfect name for sure. The final 40-something to be eliminated this season, Tara has stuck with the norm in being a private chef, and she also offers catering services and hosts events and dinner parties. Cheyenne was the youngest chef this season, and flat out one of Hell's Kitchen's youngest chefs ever, and has already done so much. After the show, she'll be a private chef before eventually becoming a brand ambassador for multiple brands such as Osmo Salt and Hexclad. She was also the first ever contestant I had on my podcast and has helped me get so many other chefs on the show. So shout out to Cheyenne for that. Summer made so much progress in season 21 and has continued to progress in her career, working her way up from lead line cook to sous chef, and is now currently a private chef. I already mentioned much of what Alejandro has been up to when talking about Alyssa, But yeah, Alejandro would also work in many other restaurants before settling down with Alyssa. Oh, and I didn't mention this yet, but they both would appear on Chopped, this time in a couples edition. The first time I can say that for this series. With respect to other chefs on this season, and honestly any other private chefs I've talked about throughout the series, Daphne has worked for many celebrity clients, including Drake, which, let's be honest, is probably the biggest celebrity in this series so far. She also hosts pop-up dinners at local restaurants. As you might expect, Alex has done so much and then some since winning season 21. He would accept his winning restaurant and work part-time for a year before eventually starting his own business called AB Hospitality. But yeah, Alex probably has the best all-around resume since the show, as he also has a podcast called Cooking, Cocktails, and Community, and is the lead singer for Reckless Eden, an indie band that has had some pretty damn good success, all things considered. Oh, and the dude is absolutely shredded now as well, despite all the heckness of it all. What an absolute beast. The legendary first boot that is Tad has continued to be the legend he is after season 22. As while he's continued to work as a sous chef, he is also an assistant coach to the Chicago Crawl, a team in the MLQ. What does MLQ stand for? Major League Quadball. Good lord, what a freaking legend. Claudia is one of the more forgettable contestants ever, but she has actually done a decent amount in the 2 years since season 22, as she would continue to work as a private chef, but is also the owner of the Green Lab Kitchen. And she actually competed in the World Food Championships in November 2023. The legendary Chef Butts has been pretty low-key since the show, continuing to work at a restaurant in Pittsburgh, and does cooking demonstrations on the side. Melissa is one of the more shocking early boots in Hell's Kitchen history, and nowadays, she's a private chef and caterer. She also, of all things, sells enamel pins, so there's that. Brad already had a decent following as a food content creator before Hell's Kitchen, but used his fame from the show and 1 in a million personality to take his content to new levels, creating fun cooking recipes on TikTok and Instagram, and has amassed hundreds of thousands of followers, and continues to appear on a ton of shows on the Food Network as well. Yet another beloved early boot from this season, Renisha has remained her busy and passionate self, working as a private chef, and is also a brand ambassador for Hexclad. She also works as an executive chef and assistant food director. So yeah, it does not appear this mid-40s woman is slowing down anytime soon. Jermaine has remained very busy as well, as he's continued to work as a private chef as his full-time gig, but he's also the director of marketing and dining at the University of Albany, another chef to work for college, which I think is pretty cool. He would also appear on Food Network's All-Star Academy, a first in this series. Devin's life has taken an interesting turn to say the very least, as he would be yet another ambassador for Hexclad while still working at restaurants in Kentucky. However, he has since moved to LA and has worked at the Emmys. I don't know if this is like his new full-time job or just one-time thing given the time of year, but yeah, that's pretty freaking cool. So I just got done saying how Daphne may have worked with the biggest star. Well, I think Sandra can top her. We all know that Sandra was a music tour chef, and since season 22, she's been able to tour with Taylor Swift. Yeah, imagine cooking for Tay-Tay, holy freaking moly. She also does pop-up diners on the road. Atoya has stayed in line with a lot of chefs in this video, working as a private chef, except she would actually have her husband helping her, which I'm sure is very nice. And they both offer cooking classes, catering, and meal prep services. While Donnie has continued to work as a private chef and caterer, thankfully she's still able to do this, as she would unfortunately get into a car accident while season 22 was airing. But as you'd expect, she would make a full recovery. I mean, come on, she's an absolute freaking badass, like how could she not? No matter what you think of Jason, you can't knock his determination, as he's worked as an executive chef for multiple restaurants since season 22. All of them pretty fine dining and receiving excellent reviews. Lee is still relatively just getting started in the cooking industry, but has already seemed to have found a good career as a private chef and offering cooking classes. Pretty cool to see the chef that was just getting out of culinary school now becoming a teacher herself. But yeah, another case where I can't wait to see what her resume is like 10 years from now. One of the biggest beasts to ever be on the show, Demir has actually remained pretty low-key, also working as a personal chef and catering chef. He has also welcomed a son into the world, and man, what an awesome dad Demir is going to make. Carmen has continued to work as a cook in the Miami area, and while you might expect her to do more in the future, I couldn't blame her if she just enjoys her life in Miami for a good amount of time. I mean, who could blame her? Sammy will continue to work as a private chef, but also as a chef at Layla Bagels in LA. We got a first here, though, when it comes to other shows a chef would be on, as she would actually appear in Gordon Ramsay's Secret Service as a spy. One of the best runner-ups ever, Jonathan has proved himself for sure, as after continuing to work as an executive chef, we had the first chef from this season to since open a restaurant called Bar Becky, which has received amazing reviews. Ryan would be another chef from these recent seasons who wouldn't take up the actual position, and instead has worked as a chef de cuisine. But it wouldn't surprise me if he does something truly epic by the end of the decade. Amber definitely isn't the worst first boot ever, and she didn't let her short run stop her, as she became a private chef, and is the owner of Feast Collective Food and Beverage LLC. After hurting his back and making a full recovery, Shant has returned to being an executive chef, and also sells food seasonings online. Fellow back hurter Uri would have to leave the show, but not only has he made a full recovery as well, but he's working as an executive chef in multiple restaurants, and also offers private chef services. Corbin would return to his 2 restaurants after the show, but would unfortunately have to sell one of them while season 24 was airing. In fact, I think around the time he was eliminated, so that must have been a pretty tough time in his life. However, hopefully he's been able to put all his focus into his remaining restaurant and doing the best for himself. Michael would of course be another head chef to return to his head chef position, which you would expect, working as executive chef, and he would also become a brand ambassador for Graza and certified Angus beef. One of the most beloved chefs this season despite being an early boot, Magali has returned to being executive chef at Baker Street Steakhouse, and has actually worked alongside Michael for a couple of special dining events. Megan will return to her job as an executive chef at a golf club, and is also the co-owner of Taste, Savor the Flavor, a company that specializes in meal prep and personal chef services. Probably the greatest earliest boot in Hell's Kitchen history, Anthony has continued to work as an executive chef, and also offers medicated infused meals, which is really cool and something you expect from the guy. He also does pop-up dining events on the side as well. I think probably the sweetest gig anyone has had post Hell's Kitchen might go to Lulu, as she now works in Costa Rica as an executive chef at a fancy resort. And when I say fancy, it is fancy. I mean, just take a look at this place. I mean, you get to do what you love while working at a place like this. Good lord, what a blessed life. Brittany would actually move to New Zealand for work, but eventually moved back to the United States. But man, that could have been another Lulu situation in terms of a beautiful location for work. As of now, she works as executive chef at Ironwork Steaks, and I'm sure she's still going on plenty of dates and impressing men with her cooking abilities. Anne-Marie continues to be an executive chef at the Corn Restaurant in Colorado, and is also a private chef for Summer and Stats LLC, and offers private dining and event catering. Joe has worked at a shit ton of different positions, despite it being only a year and a half since season 23 ended, as he would work as an executive chef and cook at many different restaurants, which include fine dining and country clubs. He also offers private dining experiences as well. Amanda is one of the few chefs this season who went away from her head chef position, and is now working as a sous chef. But what's really cool about this is that she would actually assist in helping the new chefs before working at the restaurant, which is super awesome of her. As of now, she's a chef at Lucky Lou's Raw Bar. Not only would Brandon return to his executive chef position at Stone Cellar Bistro Restaurant, but he would eventually become the co-owner of it. And he and his wife would welcome their first child into the world last year. You may not like Whip, but she has gone down more so of the caring route as opposed to remaining a head chef boss, as she is now a private chef, and also helps others open their own restaurants, which again is obviously one of the most selfless things any chef could possibly do. After having one of the most crazy runs on Hell's Kitchen of all time, EJ will return to being an executive chef at a country club, and offers private dining experiences as well. After returning to her position as executive chef at Addison Reserve Country Club, Hannah will become a private chef. However, and probably the most badass show any other chef has been on, Hannah would be, at the time of writing, on the inaugural season of Chopped Castaways, essentially a Survivor version of Chopped, which, to be honest, I have no idea what that entails, but I mean, look at the guns on Hannah. She would do something like this. Kyle, believe it or not, is still working as Prize Restaurant to this day, although I do believe it is a part-time thing, but that's still really cool and unexpected. And while I don't think he has a full-on clothing line, he still is using his fashion fame to the best of use and selling his unique style online. And I think I can pretty much bet my life on it that at some point he will indeed open up a clothing brand of some sort. After being the third chef ever to be eliminated before cooking in a service, Carlos will return to his executive chef status, but he would also take part in the 40th Anchorage Wine and Food Festival, despite being very young and unfortunately getting a lot of backlash from HK fans in New York who take this stuff way too seriously. Maddie has done well for herself, working as a personal chef, head chef, and still offering catering services. And given she's doing all of this at such a young age in Queens freaking New York, and yeah, I don't think, say, 5 to 10 years from now, she'll be too upset about her early exit on Hell's Kitchen, to say the very least. While Chase will return to working as executive chef in Montana, the biggest and most important thing is that his mental health is back to being great. And always remember, guys, no amount of success is worth bad mental health. Paul was a sous chef after season 24, but has had a bit of a transition, it seems, now working in food sales. Although I still do believe he's still working as a sous chef, but there's really no concrete evidence given the dude lives a very, and I mean very, private life. Elena has gone down the teaching route when it comes to food, working as a chef instructor at Fort Colchester High School, is a private chef, and offers cooking lessons. She also appeared on the normal version of Chopped, where she was actually a finalist. Kat would get right to work, credit to her, after her underwhelming run on Hell's Kitchen, becoming the co-founder of Our Time Kitchen. And along with that, which I'm sure keeps her busy, host dining events. Bradley has stuck with his Southern roots and has run with it, running 2 Southern-inspired catering businesses with his wife. One called Bayou on the Bay, which specializes in Cajun food. And the other one is Bayou Burgers, which of course specializes in good old Southern burgers. Not really much to update about Antonio here, as he has returned to being executive chef at the Little Clam Newport restaurant. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's living his absolute best life like this, which, honestly, good for him. John is taking an interesting path, as he is actually a homesteader and chef, which I guess I could see, even though if I am stereotyping a bit, but still. He has done pop-up events, and also has a YouTube channel called Deep South Foodies. Cara Marie would return to her executive chef job, but most importantly to her, she would get married in September 2025. Literally the month, of course, when season 24 premiered. So what a whirlwind that must have been in her life, to say the very least. I don't care what anyone says, Alexandria is a freaking legend, and continues to prove why she's such a legend off the show, as she would open up her first restaurant called Salvaki Queen, which 1, isn't a freaking amazing name, and 2, has received awesome reviews. Frick yeah, Alex. Chris, of course, is literally giving prisoners cooking demos, which shows the type of person he is. And at this show, he would continue to be a culinary instructor around New England, and is currently an instructor at the New England Culinary Arts of Training. An underrated chef from this season, Jaden would actually be the first chef from this Battle of the States season to move to a different state, going from Massachusetts to California, where I assume he was working in the cooking business as well, but again, given he's Jaden, no real concrete evidence. Many people's favorite chef from this season, Henry would return to his steakhouse in Texas, which again, I absolutely love the fact that the good old Texas boy has his own steakhouse and is truly living his best Texan life. I don't think Anthony ever said this on the show, but not only was he a sous chef entering season 24, but also owned his own food truck called FOMO Food Truck, which is a great name. And it appears he's returned to both of these jobs, which I'm sure is keeping him very busy. Anaya was a sous chef as well entering Battle of the States, and while she would return to that position afterwards, it appears the vocal Anaya now wants to live a bit of a more low-key life, now work as a private chef, and offering private dining experiences. Lisa would become a chef de cuisine, but of course, being the LA-based contestant from this season, she has taken full advantage of that, appearing on multiple TV stations to talk about her time on the show, and give cooking demos. Sydney had a great underdog run to the final 3, and she's already proven herself in the little 6 months since the season ended at the time of writing, going from executive sous chef to a flat-out executive chef now, and will likely to continue to do so much more in her life. Jada has already made some great progress as well, going from sous chef to chef de cuisine, and also hosts pop-up dining events. But yeah, Jada truly has everything going for her when it comes to not just being a success, but a true central figure in the culinary world. Like, I am genuinely so curious to see what her life is like 10 years from now. The winner of this season, Ellie, has indeed taken up her head chef position, and who knows how long she'll work there, but whatever happens, all the best of luck to her. It seemed like Billy was going down the usual route for the 40-somethings, working as a private chef. However, he has since opened not 1, but 2 restaurants in the relatively short time period since, and both of them are earning very good reviews. So good for Billy, and the best of luck to him there.